I never thought I'd stand in front of a billion-dollar CEO and tell her she was the first beautiful thing I'd noticed since my wife burned to death. But that's exactly what happened on a beach, where corporate sharks gathered to celebrate profits built on lies. What I didn't know then was that Vanessa Sinclair, the woman whose eyes softened when I said those words, was connected to the very system that killed my wife. And when my 8-year-old son started calling her by a name I thought I'd never hear again, I realized some scars don't heal, they just wait. If you're watching from anywhere in the world, drop your city in the comments below so I can see how far this story travels. Hit that like button and stick with me until the end, because what happened next changed everything I thought I knew about grief, forgiveness, and second chances. The ocean looked wrong. Nathan Brooks stood at the edge of the corporate retreat's beachfront terrace, staring at water that should have been calming but instead felt like it was mocking him. 200 miles of expensive coastline stretched in both directions, dotted with luxury hotels and conference centers where people like him, people who didn't belong, pretended they fit in. The late afternoon sun turned everything golden, the kind of light photographers killed for, but all Nathan could think about was how Sarah would have loved this view. 2 years, 730 days since the fire. He still counted. "Mr. Brooks?" A woman in a sharp black suit appeared at his elbow, tablet in hand. "The welcome reception starts in 20 minutes. Mr. Chen wanted me to remind you that attendance is mandatory for all new executives." Nathan nodded without looking at her. Executive. The title still felt like a costume he was wearing wrong. 6 months ago, he'd been adjunct teaching computer science at a community college, living paycheck to paycheck in a one-bedroom apartment with Caleb. Then Marcus Chen, his old college roommate who'd actually made something of himself, called with an offer Nathan couldn't refuse. VP of AI Integration at Sinclair Technologies. Triple his teaching salary, full benefits, a signing bonus that let him catch up on 2 years of medical debt. He'd taken it because his son needed new shoes and the landlord was done being patient. "I'll be there," he said. The woman walked away. Nathan stayed at the railing, watching waves that cost more to look at than most people earned in a month. Everything about this place screamed money. The imported sand, the minimalist architecture, the staff who appeared and disappeared like expensive ghosts. 300 Sinclair Technologies employees had been flown here for a weekend of team building and strategic planning. Nathan had checked the numbers. The retreat budget alone could have funded his entire department for a year. His phone buzzed, a text from his neighbor, Mrs. Pacheco, who was watching Caleb for the weekend. "He's good. Built a new robot. Wants to show you when you get home." Nathan smiled despite himself. Caleb had inherited Sarah's brain, the scary kind of smart that made teachers call home. Not because he was in trouble, but because they didn't know what to do with a second grader who'd taught himself Python and was correcting their math. Sarah used to joke that they'd created a tiny supervillain. She'd been so proud. The smile faded. He typed back, "Tell him I can't wait. Thanks again. You're Nathan Brooks. Pahartrian Zatun Paskis Kisain." The voice came from behind him, female and precise. Nathan turned and found himself looking at Vanessa Sinclair. He'd seen her before, obviously. Her face was plastered across business magazines and tech blogs, always photographed mid-stride in boardrooms or on chairs, looking like she was about to either close a billion-dollar deal or fire someone. In person, she was shorter than he expected, maybe 5'6" in heels. But she had the kind of presence that made height irrelevant. Mid-30s, dark hair pulled back in a way that probably had a specific name, wearing a white blazer and black pants that looked simple until you noticed how perfectly they fit. Her eyes were gray, he realized. Not blue, not green, actually gray. "Yes," he managed. "I am. Marcus speaks highly of you." She didn't offer her hand, just studied him with an intensity that made Nathan want to check if his tie was crooked. "He says you're the best AI architect he's ever worked with. That's not a compliment he gives often." Marcus exaggerates when he's had wine. Marcus doesn't drink wine. He's allergic to sulfites. A ghost of a smile touched her mouth, there and gone in a second. "He also showed me your work on the healthcare diagnostic system. The pattern recognition algorithm you developed is elegant. Most AI architects overcomplicate. You simplify." Nathan didn't know what to say to that. Vanessa Sinclair, the woman who'd built a $10 billion company from a college dorm room, who had venture capitalists competing to take her calls, knew his work. The same woman whose company he'd almost refused to join because her name appeared in footnotes of articles about hospital technology corporations and their lobbying money. "Thank you," he said, because his mother had raised him with manners, even if everything else was broken. Vanessa nodded once, then turned to look at the ocean. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Nathan should have excused himself, gone inside, networked with people who mattered. Instead, he stayed, watching this woman who supposedly never stopped moving just stand still beside him. "Do you find these retreats useful?" she asked. The question caught him off guard by actually sounding genuine. "I don't know. This is my first one. What do you think so far?" "I think it's expensive," Nathan said, then immediately regretted his honesty. "I mean, it is expensive." Vanessa's voice held something that might have been amusement, obscenely so. "But the board insists these events build company culture. Personally, I think they build resentment and hangovers, but that's not an opinion that polls well in executive meetings." Nathan surprised himself by almost laughing. "You don't seem like someone who cares what polls well." "I don't, but I've learned when to say the things people expect to hear." She glanced at him sideways. "You haven't." "Excuse me? In the 3 months you've been with Sinclair, you've declined 4 social invitations from senior leadership, left 2 company dinners early, and refused to attend Marcus's birthday party." Vanessa recited this like she was reading quarterly earnings. "The running theory among executives is that you're either arrogant or antisocial. Marcus insists you're grieving. Is he right?" The question hit Nathan like a fist to the stomach. He gripped the railing harder, metal warm under his palms from the sun. Of course she knew. Of course Marcus had told her. The whole company probably knew. That tragic backstory, poor Nathan Brooks, lost his wife, raising a kid alone. Be nice to him because he might shatter. "I'm sorry," Vanessa said, and she actually sounded it. "That was invasive. My wife died 2 years ago," Nathan heard himself say. The words still felt unreal, like they belonged to someone else's story. "There was a fire. Hospital equipment failure during her surgery. 7 people died. Sarah was one of them." He waited for the usual response, the pitying look, the awkward platitudes, the terrible mathematics of condolence where people tried to calculate the right thing to say and always came up short. Instead, Vanessa just said, "I'm sorry for your loss." No follow-up questions, no well-meaning advice. Just acknowledgement that something terrible had happened and couldn't be fixed with words. "Thank you," Nathan said. They stood there as the sun dropped lower, painting the sky in colors that hurt to look at. Nathan knew he should go inside. He'd already been weird and honest with the CEO, which was probably career suicide, but something kept him rooted in place. Maybe it was the way Vanessa wasn't trying to fill the silence with noise. Maybe it was the exhaustion of pretending to be fine for so long that standing next to someone who didn't require pretending felt like rest. "You're the first beautiful thing I've noticed since she died," Nathan said suddenly, then immediately wanted to throw himself into the ocean. Where the hell had that come from? What was wrong with him? You didn't say things like that to your CEO. You definitely didn't say them to Vanessa Sinclair, a woman who probably had billionaires competing for her attention. But Vanessa went very still. When Nathan forced himself to look at her, something had changed in her expression, something raw and unguarded that vanished almost immediately behind her usual controlled mask. "That's probably the saddest compliment I've ever received," she said quietly. "I didn't mean—" "I know what you meant." She turned to face him fully. "Thank you for your honesty. Most people lie to me, constantly. They tell me what they think I want to hear, or what they think will benefit them, or what some consultant's PowerPoint suggested might improve employee engagement." Her mouth twisted slightly. "No one has been that direct with me in a very long time." Nathan shook his head. "I should get to the reception before I say anything else stupid." "That wasn't stupid." Vanessa's gray eyes held his for a moment longer than comfortable. "It was human. We don't get enough of that in this industry." She walked away then, heels clicking against the terrace stone, leaving Nathan standing alone wondering what the hell had just happened and whether he'd just ruined his career or started something he wasn't ready for. Neither option felt safe. The reception was exactly what Nathan expected. 200 people in expensive casual wear drinking craft cocktails and pretending the weekend wasn't just a tax-deductible excuse to avoid their families. He grabbed a beer he didn't want and found Marcus holding court near the buffet table. There he is! Marcus threw an arm around Nathan's shoulders with the easy confidence of someone who'd never known real loss. Where have you been hiding? Railing, ocean, you know. Right. Listen, I want you to meet some people. This is Jennifer Wu from Platform Engineering and David something from Finance. Goldman, the finance guy supplied. Goldman, right. And this absolute legend is Chris Pachowski from our European office. Everyone, this is Nathan Brooks, the AI wizard I've been telling you about. Nathan shook hands and smiled and made the appropriate noises while his brain cataloged everyone's expressions. Jennifer looked genuinely curious. David looked like he was calculating Nathan's worth and finding it wanting. Chris just looked drunk. So you're the one Vanessa personally approved, Jennifer said. That's rare. She usually delegates hiring to Marcus. I got lucky, Nathan said. Lucky. David swirled his whiskey. That's one word for it. I heard she's been sitting in on your project reviews. Personally. When's the last time the CEO sat in on anyone's project reviews? Marcus? Marcus's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. Vanessa takes interest in innovative work. Nathan's building something genuinely new. I'm sure that's all it is. David's tone suggested he thought it was anything but. No other reason the Ice Queen would suddenly... David, Marcus's voice went flat. Don't. What? I'm just saying what everyone's thinking. 3 months and he's already got direct access to the C-suite. Some of us have been here 5 years and still need 3 approvals to talk to a VP. Nathan felt the conversation tilting toward something ugly. If you'll excuse me, I need to... Nathan! A new voice cut through the tension. Nathan turned to find a woman he vaguely recognized from the marketing department beaming at him. I've been meaning to talk to you about the diagnostic system. My sister works at Seattle General, and she says it's already caught 2 early-stage cancers that their old system missed. You're literally saving lives. The group's dynamic shifted. Jennifer jumped in with technical questions. Chris asked about implementation timelines. Even David seemed to recalculate, his expression shifting from dismissive to grudgingly interested. But Nathan caught Marcus watching him with an expression that might have been concern, or calculation, or both. The evening dragged on. Nathan talked about machine learning and training datasets and error rates until the words lost meaning. He smiled when expected. He laughed at jokes he didn't find funny. He played the part of a successful executive with a tragic past, who was totally fine now, really, completely functional. All the while he was hyper-aware of Vanessa moving through the crowd like a shark through water. Efficient, purposeful, commanding attention without seeming to try. She didn't look at him again. He told himself he was relieved. By 9 o'clock, Nathan's face hurt from forcing normalcy. He slipped away from a conversation about blockchain applications and found a quiet hallway leading toward the beach. The resort had floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the water, now black except where moonlight caught the waves. He stood there, forehead against cool glass, and let himself breathe. Hiding again? Nathan jumped. Vanessa stood 10 feet away, somehow having appeared without sound. She'd lost the blazer and was just in a black sleeveless top that probably cost more than his car. Just needed air. Yeah, he said. The air inside a climate-controlled resort is technically superior to beach air. Salt, humidity, various microorganisms. Are you always this literal? Usually. She moved to stand beside him at the window. But I understand the metaphor. These events are exhausting. You're the CEO. Couldn't you just cancel them? I'm the CEO. Which means there are approximately 50 reasons I can't cancel them, all involving shareholder optics, employee satisfaction surveys, and board members who think corporate culture means forced fun. She paused. I built this company. Sometimes I wonder if it built me instead. Nathan looked at her, really looked, for the first time past the reputation and the wealth and the intimidation factor. There were shadows under her eyes, carefully hidden by expensive makeup. A tightness around her mouth that suggested she smiled professionally far more than genuinely. Why did you build it? He asked. Vanessa was quiet for a long moment. Because I could. Because people told me I couldn't. Because building something meant I didn't have to think about everything I was running from. She shook her head slightly. That's not the answer I give to Forbes. What do you tell Forbes? That I saw an opportunity to revolutionize human-computer interaction through contextual AI and decided to pursue it with aggressive vertical integration. Her voice took on a mockingly professional tone. That I'm passionate about innovation and committed to building technology that improves lives. But really? Really, I spent my 20s terrified of failure and my 30s terrified of success. I have more money than I can spend in 3 lifetimes, and I still check my bank balance every morning like I'm going to wake up broke. She turned to face him. I'm telling you things I don't tell people. Why is that? Nathan didn't have an answer that made sense. Maybe because I don't want anything from you. Everyone wants something from me. I want to go home and build robots with my kid. The truth came out easier than lies. I want to not wake up reaching for someone who isn't there. I want my son to laugh like he used to before his mother died in front of him. Vanessa's expression flickered. Caleb was there. Nathan hadn't meant to say that part. He never talked about that part. But something about standing in this expensive hallway with this untouchable woman who suddenly seemed very human made the words come anyway. The surgery was supposed to be routine gallbladder removal, but there was an electrical fault in the operating room, faulty wiring, outdated systems, corporate cost-cutting disguised as efficiency improvements. The sprinklers triggered, but the fire suppression system failed. Sarah was under anesthesia. She couldn't move. Nathan's hands curled into fists. Caleb and I were in the waiting room. We heard the alarms. Security wouldn't let us through. He was 6 years old and he heard his mother dying and couldn't do anything about it. Nathan? The hospital settled. Confidential amount, non-disclosure agreement, very sorry for your loss. Here's some money to make the lawsuit go away. Caleb hasn't spoken about that day since. Won't talk to therapists, won't even say her name. But he builds things constantly. Robots, machines, anything with parts he can control. Because if you understand how something works, maybe you can fix it before it breaks. Vanessa looked stricken. Actually stricken, which somehow made it worse because Nathan hadn't wanted to break this composed woman's control, hadn't meant to weaponize his tragedy. I'm sorry, he said. I don't know why I told you that. Because I asked. Her voice was rough. She stopped, seeming to recalibrate. Thank you for trusting me with that. They stood in silence that felt different from the comfortable quiet on the terrace. This was heavier, loaded with things neither of them knew how to name. I should go, Nathan said. Early session tomorrow. Nathan. Vanessa caught his arm as he turned. Her hand was warm through his shirt sleeve. What you said earlier, on the terrace. I need you to know that... She stopped again, clearly struggling with something. That meant more than you probably intended. She let go and walked away before he could respond, leaving Nathan standing alone in the hallway, wondering what the hell was happening and why it felt like he'd just stepped off a cliff he hadn't seen coming. Nathan didn't sleep well. The resort bed was too soft, the ocean too loud, his brain too busy replaying conversations he shouldn't have had. By 6 a.m., he gave up and went for a run on the beach, pounding out miles on sand that fought every step. His phone rang as he was walking back, cooling down. Mrs. Pacheco. Nathan, hi, sorry to call so early. His heart stopped. Is Caleb okay? He's fine. He's fine. I promise. But he's insisting I call you right now because he had a breakthrough on his robot and needs to explain the algorithm before he forgets. Should I put him on? Nathan's heart restarted. Yeah, please. A moment later, Caleb's voice came through, rapid fire and excited in the way that only happened when he was deep in a problem. Dad, listen. I figured out why the arm wasn't tracking properly. It's not a hardware issue. It's the servo timing. The microcontroller can't process fast enough, so there's lag. But if I use interrupts instead of polling... Nathan smiled despite his exhaustion. Slow down, bud. Interrupts instead of what? Polling. I was polling the sensor in the main loop, but that's stupid because other stuff has to happen too. So if I use interrupt service routines, then... They talked for 20 minutes about code and timing and edge cases. Caleb explained his robot's navigation system with the kind of detail that would lose most adults in 30 seconds. But Nathan followed every word because this was his son. Brilliant and weird, and so much like Sarah it physically hurt sometimes. That's really smart, Caleb, Nathan said when his son finally paused for breath. Interrupts are definitely the right call. You figured that out yourself? I mean, I watched some YouTube videos on embedded programming, but I understood it myself. A pause. When are you coming home? Tomorrow evening. Just one more day. Okay. Another pause. Longer this time. Mrs. Pacheco made pancakes, but they're not as good as yours. Nathan's chest tightened. I'll make you pancakes when I get back. Extra chocolate chips. That's bribery. That's love, kid. After they hung up, Nathan stood on the beach watching resort workers rake the sand into perfect smoothness, erasing all evidence that people had walked there the day before. He thought about Caleb building machines he could control because the world had proven itself uncontrollable. He thought about Vanessa standing in that hallway, looking like she understood something about running from grief, even though her life seemed perfect from the outside. He thought about going home and forgetting this entire weird weekend. But when he got back to his room, there was a message waiting. Vanessa Sinclair wanted to see him at 9 a.m., her private office. No explanation. Nathan stared at his phone, that familiar anxiety crawling up his spine, the same feeling he got whenever authority figures summoned him, like he was about to be punished for some transgression he didn't know he'd committed. He showered and dressed and tried not to think about how quickly professional boundaries had dissolved. By 8:50, he was standing outside a conference room the resort had converted into Vanessa's temporary office, palms sweating like he was 16 again, and getting called to the principal. The door opened. Vanessa looked like she'd been up for hours, perfectly composed, fresh coffee in hand, no trace of the raw honesty from last night. Nathan, come in. The room was sparse. Desk, chairs, windows overlooking the ocean, no decoration, no personal items. Vanessa gestured to a seat and sat across from him, all business. I've been reviewing your diagnostic system's deployment metrics, she said without preamble. The accuracy improvement over existing solutions is significant. 43% reduction in false negatives, 27% reduction in false positives. Nathan waited. This wasn't what she'd called him here for. I want to scale it, Vanessa continued, not just the pilot hospitals. National rollout within 6 months, every major hospital system in the country. Nathan tried to process. That's a massive undertaking. The infrastructure alone, I know. Which is why I'm assigning you a team, full resources, direct reporting line to me. There it was. The thing David had sneered about last night. Direct access. The kind of career acceleration that should take years, handed to him in a single conversation. Why? Nathan asked. Vanessa's expression didn't change. Because your system saves lives. Because you understand the human cost of medical errors in a way most engineers don't. Because you're good at this and I need good people doing important work. All logical reasons, all probably true. But Nathan heard the thing she didn't say, that she was giving him this opportunity less than 12 hours after he'd opened up about his dead wife and traumatized son. People will talk, he said carefully. People are already talking. Vanessa's mouth tightened almost imperceptibly. They talked when I hired you. They'll talk when I promote you. They'll talk regardless of what either of us does, because that's what happens when a woman runs a company. Every decision gets scrutinized for evidence that she's too emotional, too impulsive, too female to be trusted. I didn't mean, I know what you meant, and you're right. This will cause problems. She leaned forward slightly. I'm offering anyway. The question is whether you're willing to accept work that matters despite the politics. Nathan thought about Caleb, about algorithms catching diseases early, about the possibility that his grief could actually become something useful instead of just heavy. When do I start? He said. Vanessa smiled, small and genuine. Monday. Marcus will be furious that I'm stealing his best hire. Marcus will understand. Marcus will understand and still be furious. She stood, extending her hand. Welcome to the Strategic Initiatives Division, Mr. Brooks. Her handshake was firm, professional, appropriate. But Nathan felt that same electric awareness from the terrace, That dangerous recognition that they'd shared something real in a world built on professional masks. He left her office more confused than when he'd entered, unsure whether he'd just gotten the opportunity of a lifetime or made the biggest mistake of his career. Probably both. The rest of the retreat blurred. Nathan sat through presentations on market positioning and competitive strategy, his brain half present while the other half cataloged everything he'd need for the national rollout. The scale was terrifying. The timeline was aggressive. The stakes were literally life and death. He saw Vanessa once more from a distance during the closing keynote, where she talked about innovation and excellence and staying ahead of disruption. She was magnetic on stage, confident, articulate, the kind of leader people wanted to follow. The woman who'd stood in a hallway, admitting she was terrified of her own success, seemed like someone Nathan had imagined. But when her eyes found his in the crowd for just a second, he knew he hadn't imagined anything. The drive home Sunday evening felt longer than it should. Nathan navigated highway traffic while his phone lit up with emails. Marcus asking what the hell had happened, HR sending onboarding documents for his new role, team members he hadn't met yet, introducing themselves via CC'd messages. His career had just changed overnight. His entire trajectory had shifted. And all because he'd told the truth to someone who apparently wasn't used to hearing it. He pulled into his apartment complex after dark. Mrs. Pacheco met him at the door with Caleb practically vibrating with excitement. Dad, I need to show you what I built." Nathan barely got his bag down before Caleb dragged him to the living room where a small robot sat on the coffee table. It was made from spare parts and 3D printed components, wiring visible like tiny guts, LED eyes that blinked in sequence. "Watch," Caleb commanded. He tapped something on his laptop. The robot lurched to life, rolling forward, stopping before the table edge, turning 90 degrees with mechanical precision. Its arm extended, gripped a marker, retracted. The whole sequence was clumsy but functional, the work of an 8-year-old teaching himself robotics through trial and error. "That's incredible, buddy," Nathan said, and meant it. "The interrupts worked. I told you." Caleb beamed with the kind of pure joy that had been absent for so long. Nathan had almost forgotten what it looked like. "Mrs. Pacheco said it's the coolest thing she's ever seen." Mrs. Pacheco is correct. Nathan pulled his son into a hug, breathing in the smell of cheap shampoo and electronics. "I'm so proud of you." Caleb hugged back, skinny arms tight. "Did you have fun at your work thing?" Fun wasn't the word Nathan would use. Complicated, confusing, potentially career-defining or career-destroying. "It was interesting," he settled on. "I'll tell you about it over pancakes tomorrow." "Deal? Extra chocolate chips?" "So many chocolate chips will probably get cavities." After Mrs. Pacheco left and Caleb was asleep, Nathan sat in the dark living room staring at his son's robot. It looked fragile and cobbled together, but it worked. It did what Caleb designed it to do despite being built from scraps and determination. Kind of like Nathan himself. Kind of like this new life he was trying to build from the wreckage of his old one. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "This is Vanessa. Marcus gave me your contact info. I wanted to thank you for being honest with me this weekend. I don't get that often. Looking forward to working with you." Nathan stared at the message for a long time before responding. "Thank you for trusting me with the project. I won't let you down." 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. Finally, "I know." That was all. But Nathan sat there in the dark wondering why 2 words from his CEO felt more significant than any performance review he'd ever received. Outside his window, the city lights stretched into darkness. Somewhere out there, Vanessa Sinclair was probably still working, still building her empire, still running from whatever ghosts chased her. And Nathan Brooks was sitting in a mediocre apartment with a brilliant son and a broken heart and a career opportunity that felt like standing at the edge of a cliff. He'd already fallen once. The grief had nearly destroyed him, but maybe, just maybe, learning to live again meant taking the risk of falling again. Even if it terrified him. Especially if it terrified him. Nathan looked at Caleb's robot, its LED eyes dark now, waiting for someone to bring it back to life. Then he picked up his phone and started making notes for Monday. Because whether he was ready or not, everything was about to change. Monday morning hit like cold water. Nathan walked into Sinclair Technologies headquarters with a new badge that granted him access to floors he'd never seen before. Strategic Initiatives Division occupied the 23rd floor, all glass walls and open workspaces designed by someone who'd never actually tried to concentrate in an open workspace. His new team was waiting in a conference room that overlooked the city, 12 people whose careers now depended on him not screwing this up. Marcus intercepted him before he reached the conference room door. "So you're really doing this," Marcus said. No preamble, no pretense. "Apparently. You know what people are saying, right?" Marcus lowered his voice even though the hallway was empty. "That you slept your way into this promotion. That Vanessa's lost her edge, making decisions with her heart instead of her head. That you're in way over your head and she's too blinded by whatever the hell happened at the retreat to see it." Nathan's jaw tightened. "Nothing happened at the retreat." "I didn't say it did. I'm telling you what the executive floor is whispering." Marcus ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. "Look, I vouched for you. I brought you into this company because you're legitimately brilliant. But this promotion, Nathan, it's too fast. You've been here 3 months. You haven't built any political capital. You don't know how to navigate the sharks on the board." "Then teach me." "I'm trying, but you need to understand what you're walking into. David Goldman is already calling this Vanessa's vanity project. Jennifer Wu thinks you're unqualified. Half the senior leadership team sees you as proof that Vanessa plays favorites, which undermines every other decision she makes." Marcus grabbed Nathan's arm. "Boys, Marcus, you're not just representing yourself anymore. You're representing her judgment. If you fail, she fails. And people are waiting for her to fail." Nathan pulled his arm free. "Why?" "Because she's a woman who's more successful than they are. Because she doesn't play the game the way they want her to. Because people like David have been waiting years for her to make a mistake big enough to justify replacing her." Marcus met his eyes. "Don't be that mistake." The conference room door opened. A woman in her 40s with sharp eyes and sharper posture appeared. "Mr. Brooks? We're ready when you are." Nathan looked at Marcus one more time, saw genuine concern beneath the frustration, then nodded. "Thanks for the warning. Nathan, just be careful, please." Inside the conference room, 12 strangers evaluated him with expressions ranging from curious to skeptical to outright hostile. Nathan recognized a few faces from company directories, senior engineers, project managers, data scientists who'd been with Sinclair for years. "Good morning," Nathan started, then stopped because good morning felt absurdly inadequate. "I know this is strange. Most of you have been with this company longer than I've been here. Some of you probably applied for this position and didn't get it. I'm not going to pretend I earned this the traditional way." A few surprised looks. The hostile ones softened slightly. "What I'm going to tell you is why this matters." Nathan pulled up the first slide. Hospital error statistics, mortality rates, the human cost of diagnostic failures. Every year, 12 million Americans are misdiagnosed. Of those, 40,000 die from conditions that could have been caught earlier. The system I built catches patterns human doctors miss. Not because doctors are incompetent, but because pattern recognition across millions of data points is what machines do better than biology. He clicked to the next slide. Early results from the pilot hospitals. Cancer caught at stage 1 instead of stage 3. Heart conditions identified months before symptoms became critical. Rare diseases diagnosed in weeks instead of years. "This isn't theoretical," Nathan said quietly. "This is real people living instead of dying. And we're going to scale it nationwide in 6 months, which is impossible, except we're going to do it anyway because the alternative is unacceptable." He looked around the room. "I need you to be better than good. I need you to be extraordinary. And in exchange, I'll work harder than anyone else in this room. I'll fight for the resources you need. And I'll make sure that when this succeeds, and it will succeed, everyone knows it was because of this team." Silence. Then the woman who'd called him in spoke. Rachel Kim, Senior Project Manager. "I've been trying to get executive approval for hospital AI expansion for 2 years. Every proposal I submitted got killed in committee because it was too expensive, too risky, too fast." She crossed her arms. "Why is it different now?" "Because Vanessa Sinclair decided it matters," Nathan said honestly. "I can't take credit for that, but I can promise you I'll justify her decision." "And if we can't deliver in 6 months?" This from a guy in the back, mid-20s, looking like he hadn't slept in a week. "Then we communicate that early, we adjust expectations, and we deliver the best possible version of what we can achieve. Nathan met his eyes. I'm not asking for miracles, I'm asking for honest assessment and maximum effort. If we hit roadblocks, we solve them together. If we need to push back on timelines, we do it with data and solutions, not excuses. Rachel uncrossed her arms. When do we start? Right now. The next 6 hours were controlled chaos. Rachel walked Nathan through the existing infrastructure. What worked, what didn't, what would need complete rebuilding. The engineering team identified integration points with hospital systems. The data scientists outlined the training requirements for deploying across different medical contexts. By the time Nathan looked up, it was after 7 p.m. and the office had emptied, except for his team still huddled around laptops and whiteboards covered in diagrams that looked like circuit boards drawn by someone having a fever dream. Go home, Nathan said. All of you. We're not solving this tonight. But the preliminary timeline, Rachel started. We'll still be there tomorrow. Go home. Sleep. Come back fresh. He softened slightly. This is a marathon, not a sprint. I need you functional, not burned out. They left in ones and twos, dragging bags and coffee cups and the exhausted satisfaction of people who'd actually accomplished something. Rachel lingered near the door. You're different than I expected, she said. Good different or bad different? Jury's still out, but she almost smiled. For what it's worth, I don't think you slept your way here. You're too awkward for that. Nathan laughed despite himself. That's the most backhanded compliment I've received in years. You should hear what I say about people I actually don't like. She left, and Nathan was alone in the conference room with whiteboards full of problems and a timeline that made his stomach hurt. His phone buzzed. Caleb, via Mrs. Pacheco's phone, can you help me debug my code when you get home? The robot keeps turning left instead of right, and I don't know why. Nathan smiled. On my way. Order pizza. Extra cheese. He was packing his laptop when Vanessa appeared in the doorway. She looked tired, he realized. Not just end-of-day tired, but the bone-deep exhaustion of someone carrying weight they couldn't put down. Her hair had escaped whatever style it started in. She'd lost the blazer somewhere, was just in a gray blouse that matched her eyes. How was day one, she asked. Terrifying and productive. Your team is good. Rachel Kim especially. Rachel's been pushing for this project since before you arrived. I should have listened to her earlier. Vanessa walked into the room, studying the whiteboards. This timeline is aggressive. It's your timeline. I know. I'm allowed to second-guess myself. She turned to face him. Are you having regrets yet? Nathan considered lying, decided against it. Every 5 minutes. Then I remember why it matters, and the regrets shut up for a while. Good. That means you understand the stakes. She was quiet for a moment. I heard what you told the team, about not pretending you earned this the traditional way. Did I overshare? You were honest. People respond to honesty. Vanessa's expression shifted, something uncertain crossing her face. Nathan, I need you to understand something. I didn't promote you because of what you told me at the retreat. I promoted you because you're the right person for this work. But I'm not blind to how it looks. Marcus already gave me the speech about being careful. Marcus is right. There are people in this company who want me to fail, and they'll use anything they can find as ammunition. She met his eyes. I won't apologize for making the right decision, but I need you to know that everything you do reflects on both of us now. Fair or not, that's the reality. Nathan thought about all the times people had treated him differently after Sarah died. The pity, the lowered expectations, the assumption that grief made him fragile. He'd hated being defined by loss. Vanessa was being defined by gender, by success, by refusing to play by rules written by men who resented her for winning. I won't let you down, he said. I know. She smiled slightly. You already said that. I believed you then too. She left, and Nathan stood in the empty conference room wondering how he'd ended up here. Trusted by a woman the business world simultaneously feared and undermined. Leading a team trying to save lives on an impossible timeline, still going home to help his 8-year-old debug code because that's what Monday nights were for. The city stretched out below, lights coming on as darkness fell. Somewhere out there people were sick, dying, waiting for diagnoses that might come too late. Nathan grabbed his bag and headed home to his son. The pizza was cold by the time he got there, but Caleb didn't care. They sat on the living room floor with the robot between them and Caleb's laptop open, scrolling through lines of code looking for the bug that made the robot turn left when it should turn right. "There, Kin," Nathan said, pointing. "Your conditional logic is backwards. You're telling it to turn left when the sensor reads greater than 50, but you want it to turn right." Caleb squinted at the screen. "Oh, that's stupid. Why did I do that?" "Because you're human, and humans make mistakes. That's why we debug." Nathan ruffled his son's hair. "Fix it and try again." Caleb corrected the code, uploaded it to the robot, and they both held their breath as the little machine rolled forward, stopped, turned right. "Yes!" Caleb pumped his fist. "Did you see that? It worked. I saw. You're getting really good at this, bud. When I'm older, I'm going to build real robots, like the ones at your work." Caleb looked up at him with Sarah's eyes, dark and intelligent and seeing too much. "Is your new job hard?" "Yeah," Nathan admitted. "Really hard. But you're good at hard things." "What makes you say that?" Caleb shrugged with the casual wisdom of children who didn't realize they were being profound. "You didn't give up after Mom died. You could have. Some people do, but you didn't." Nathan's throat tightened. They didn't talk about Sarah. Caleb refused, had refused for 2 years despite therapists and gentle prodding and everything Nathan tried. Hearing her mentioned so casually was like a door cracking open. "I had you," Nathan said carefully. "That made it easier." "Did it?" Caleb's voice was small. "I thought I made it harder. Because you had to take care of me instead of being sad." "Caleb." Nathan pulled his son close, feeling the skinny shoulders, the bird bone fragility of childhood. "You're the only reason I'm still here, you understand that? The only reason." Caleb buried his face in Nathan's shoulder, and for a moment they just sat there on the floor with a robot that finally turned the right direction and pizza nobody was eating and grief that had finally found a crack to seep through. "I miss her," Caleb whispered. "I know, buddy. I miss her too." "Does it ever stop hurting?" Nathan thought about lying, about offering comfort he wasn't sure existed. Instead, he chose truth. "It hurts less. Slowly. Some days are harder than others, but it gets easier to carry." "How much easier?" "I don't know yet. I'm still figuring it out." Caleb pulled back, wiping his eyes roughly. "Your new boss seems nice." "Mrs. Pacheco showed me an article about her. She built a whole company from her college dorm." "She did. Is she smart like Mom was smart?" The question caught Nathan off guard. Different kind of smart, but yeah, really smart. "Good." Caleb picked up his robot, examining the servos with intense focus. "You should work with smart people. Mom would want that." Later, after Caleb was asleep and Nathan was staring at his laptop trying to make sense of infrastructure requirements and deployment schedules, he thought about that casual assessment. "Your new boss seems nice." As if Vanessa Sinclair was just some normal person, not a CEO with a net worth higher than most countries' GDP. But maybe that was closer to the truth than the business magazine suggested. Maybe underneath the power suits and boardroom dominance was just someone trying to figure things out like everyone else. His phone buzzed. An email from Rachel with the subject line, "Preliminary Roadmap, Tear It Apart." Nathan opened the attachment and spent the next 3 hours doing exactly that, marking up timelines and resource allocations and dependency chains. By the time he finished, it was after midnight and his eyes burned, but the roadmap was actually good. Aggressive but achievable if everything went right and nothing went catastrophically wrong. He sent it back with comments and crawled into bed, brain still spinning with logistics and code, and the memory of Caleb saying he didn't give up. The days blurred together after that. Nathan fell into a rhythm of early mornings and late nights, conference calls with hospital administrators, technical reviews with the engineering team, budget negotiations with finance people who treated every dollar like it was being stolen from their children. He saw Vanessa in passing, hallways, elevators, once in the cafeteria where she was eating a sandwich alone at a table while reading something on her tablet. She'd looked up when he passed, given him a small nod, then gone back to work. No special treatment, no favoritism, just the distant professionalism of a CEO with 300 other employees to manage. But twice a week, she sat in on his team's progress reviews, asking questions that proved she actually understood the technical details, pushing back when timelines looked padded, defending them when finance tried to cut essential resources. The hospital integration layer needs dedicated bandwidth, Nathan argued during one particularly contentious meeting. We're talking real-time diagnostic analysis on patient data. Network latency could literally kill someone. That's a 30% cost increase, David Goldman countered. He'd been circling Nathan's project like a shark since day one, looking for blood in the water. For theoretical risk mitigation, it's not theoretical, it's physics. Data transmission takes time. Critical patient data can't wait. Nathan pulled up a slide showing latency calculations. Would you want your diagnosis delayed by 3 seconds because we cheaped out on infrastructure? I'd want my company to be financially responsible instead of throwing money at problems. Gentlemen? Vanessa's voice cut through the rising tension. David, what's the cost of a wrongful death lawsuit? Excuse me? Simple question. Average wrongful death settlement in medical malpractice. Ballpark figure. David's jaw tightened. Depends on the case. Somewhere between 1 and 5 million. And how many additional lawsuits do you think we'd face if our system's latency caused a single misdiagnosis that resulted in death? Vanessa let the question hang. Nathan's asking for dedicated bandwidth. Approve it. Vanessa, with all due respect, I'm not asking David. Approve it. The meeting ended shortly after, David stalking out with his assistant, scrambling to keep up. Nathan stayed behind to pack his laptop, hyper-aware of Vanessa still sitting at the head of the conference table. Thank you, he said quietly. Don't thank me. You made the right argument. David just needed to hear it from someone he can't dismiss as technically incompetent. She stood, gathering her materials. Though you should know that little victory will cost you. David doesn't forget when he's overruled. Great. Add it to the list of people who hate me. The list is shorter than you think. And the people who matter know you're doing good work. She paused at the door. How's Caleb? The question surprised him. Good. Building increasingly complicated robots, debugging code at 8 years old that would frustrate most adults. He gets that from you. He gets it from his mother. Sarah was the engineer. I just taught computers to be less stupid. Vanessa's expression softened almost imperceptibly. You don't give yourself enough credit. I give myself exactly the right amount of credit, which is slightly above mediocre on good days. Nathan tried for humor, but it came out tired. How do you do this? This? All of it. The company, the politics, the constant fighting for things that should be obvious. Doesn't it exhaust you? Vanessa was quiet for a long moment. Every single day. But the alternative is letting people like David make decisions. And I've seen what happens when people prioritize profit over everything else. Her voice went hard. This company exists because I refuse to accept that money matters more than doing the right thing. Some days that's easier than others. She left before Nathan could respond, and he stood alone in the conference room thinking about the weight she carried that nobody saw because she made it look effortless. The weeks rolled into a month. The project gained momentum. Hospital partnerships signed, infrastructure deployed, training programs launched. Nathan's team worked brutal hours and somehow didn't burn out, fueled by the steady stream of early results showing lives actually being saved. Rachel became his unofficial second-in-command, the person who knew which executives to charm and which to avoid, how to navigate procurement bureaucracy, when to push, and when to strategically retreat. They fell into an easy working relationship built on mutual respect and shared exhaustion. You're getting better at the politics, she observed one evening when they were reviewing deployment schedules. Less like a startled deer, more like someone who knows what they're doing. High praise. From me? Absolutely. She marked something on the timeline. Though you should know there's a betting pool about you and Vanessa. Nathan's stomach dropped. What? Office gossip. Don't pretend you haven't heard it. Rachel didn't look up from her work. Current odds are 3-to-1 that you're sleeping together, 5-to-1 that you will be within 6 months, 2-to-1 that it'll end badly and take your career with it. There's nothing, I know. Anyone who actually works with both of you knows. You're aggressively professional to the point of awkwardness. and she treats you exactly the same as every other direct report. Rachel finally looked at him. But perception matters in corporate politics, fair or not. What am I supposed to do about perception? Nothing, just be aware of it. And maybe don't have any more private conversations in hallways where junior executives can accidentally overhear and misinterpret. Nathan groaned. That was one time. We were discussing technical specifications. Sure, but the junior executive who walked past heard two people who clearly respect each other having an intense conversation, and human brains are wired to see patterns even when they don't exist. But she softened slightly. I'm not judging. I'm warning. There are people who want to use any ammunition they can find. That night, Nathan lay in bed staring at the ceiling, thinking about betting pools and gossip, and the impossible position of trying to do good work while people analyzed every interaction for scandal. His phone buzzed, a text from Vanessa. Board meeting next week. They'll want a progress update. Are we ready? Nathan typed back. Deployment is ahead of schedule. Results are strong. We're ready. Good. Get some sleep. You sound tired even in text messages. He smiled despite everything. How can you tell someone sounds tired in text? Shorter sentences, less detail. It's a pattern. Of course you'd notice patterns. You're an engineer. I'm a CEO who used to be an engineer. There's a difference. What's the difference? The response took longer this time. Then, engineers solve problems. CEOs manage people who solve problems while fighting people who create problems. Much less satisfying. Nathan found himself typing without thinking. Do you miss it? The engineering? Every day? Coding was simple? Elegant. You wrote something beautiful and it either worked or it didn't. No politics. No interpretation. Just logic. A pause. People are messier. People are definitely messier. Get some sleep, Nathan. Board meeting is at 9. Don't be late. Yes, ma'am. And stop calling me ma'am. It makes me feel ancient. You're 30. That's barely middle-aged. I'm going to pretend you didn't just call me middle-aged. Good night. Nathan put his phone down, still smiling, then realized he'd just had an entire casual text conversation with his CEO at midnight, and maybe Rachel was right about being careful with perception, but it had felt normal, easy. Like talking to someone who understood the specific loneliness of lying awake thinking about work and loss, and the terror of caring about things that could fail. He fell asleep trying not to think about what that meant. The board meeting arrived with the weight of Judgment Day. Nathan stood in front of 15 people whose combined net worth could probably buy a small country, presenting data on hospital deployments and diagnostic improvements and cost savings that made even the skeptics pay attention. David Goldman tried to poke holes in the methodology. Nathan addressed each concern with data and patience, watching David's frustration grow with every rebuttal. An older woman Nathan recognized as Helen Chen, the board's longest-serving member, leaned forward. Mr. Brooks, this is impressive work. Genuinely impressive. But I have to ask, what happens when you leave? This entire initiative seems to rest on your specific expertise. That's a risk factor. The team is cross-trained on all major systems, Nathan said. Rachel Kim could run this project tomorrow if necessary. So could 3 other senior engineers. We've documented everything specifically to avoid single points of failure. But you're the architect, the vision behind it. I'm one architect. The vision belongs to everyone who believed this work mattered enough to bet their careers on an impossible timeline. Nathan glanced at Vanessa, who sat at the far end of the table, expressionless. I'm just the person who got the opportunity to build it. Helen smiled slightly. Diplomatic answer. Honest answer. My team is exceptional. I'm just stubborn enough to push them. The meeting continued for another hour, questions and challenges, and the careful dance of proving worth to people who measured everything in profit margins. By the time it ended, Nathan's shirt was stuck to his back with sweat, and his head pounded. But Helen Chen stopped him on the way out. You did well in there. David's going to keep coming after you, though. He sees you as Vanessa's weakness. We're not. I know, but David doesn't care about truth. He cares about leverage. She studied him with sharp eyes. Be careful, Mr. Brooks. You're good at your job. Don't let politics destroy that. Nathan walked back to his office in a daze, past people who didn't look at him, through hallways that felt too bright. He'd just survived a board meeting. The project was approved for continued funding. Everything should feel like victory. Instead, he felt exposed, like he'd been evaluated for things that had nothing to do with his work. Rachel was waiting at his desk with coffee. "You lived. Congratulations." "Did I do okay?" "You did great. Helen Chen complimented your work, which she does maybe once a year. David looked like he wanted to strangle you, which means you won." She handed him the coffee. "Drink this. You look pale." Nathan obeyed, grateful for the caffeine and the company. "Is it always like this? Corporate politics?" "Yeah. Gets worse the higher you climb." Rachel sat on the edge of his desk. "But for what it's worth, you're handling it better than most people would. You stay focused on the work instead of getting dragged into the drama." "The work is all I know how to do." "Then keep doing it. Let Vanessa handle the politics. That's what CEOs are for." Nathan thought about Vanessa sitting alone in that conference room, defending bandwidth requirements, carrying the weight of making decisions that people like David would weaponize against her. "She shouldn't have to fight this hard," he said quietly. "No, but she does anyway. That's why people like her." Rachel stood. "Come on. Team's waiting to celebrate surviving the board meeting. We ordered Thai food, and there's a betting pool on how many times David said fiscal responsibility." "How many?" 17. "You said 12. You lose." Nathan followed her to the conference room where his team had indeed ordered enough Thai food to feed a small army. They cheered when he walked in, and for a moment the exhaustion lifted, replaced by the simple satisfaction of being surrounded by people who understood what they'd built together. He stayed longer than he meant to, eating pad thai and laughing at Rachel's impression of David Goldman's increasingly desperate objections. By the time he left, the office was dark except for the cleaning crew and a few dedicated workaholics burning the midnight oil. The elevator dinged on the 23rd floor. Vanessa stepped in just as the doors were closing. They rode down in silence for 3 floors before she spoke. "You did well today." "Thank you." Helen was impressed. That's rare. "She told me. Also warned me about David. Helen's smart." Vanessa stared at the descending floor numbers. "David's going to keep pushing. He thinks if he can prove you're incompetent or I'm showing favoritism, he can leverage that to challenge my authority." "What do you want me to do?" "Your job, exactly as you've been doing it." She finally looked at him. "Don't let their politics make you doubt your work. You're good at this, better than good." The elevator reached the lobby. The doors opened to the building's empty marble entrance. Security guards, the only witnesses to 2 people who'd spent too many hours fighting battles that shouldn't exist. "Can I ask you something?" Nathan said as they walked toward the exit. "Of course." "Why do you keep fighting? You could sell the company tomorrow, retire with more money than you could spend, never deal with people like David again. Why do you stay?" Vanessa stopped walking. Outside the glass doors, the city stretched into darkness, millions of lights marking lives being lived. "Because if I leave, people like David win. And I've spent my entire life watching people like David make decisions that prioritize profit over everything else." Her voice was quiet but fierce. "My first startup failed because investors pulled funding when we wouldn't cut corners on safety testing. 15 people lost their jobs because I insisted on doing things right." "You don't," Marcus said. "But if I'm showing you a fake, then the real one is still out there, which means you haven't actually solved anything. So what's the point?" "The point is you could be buying time. For what? I'm sitting here with both of you, showing you exactly how I've been running this operation. If I was buying time, I'd be halfway to the airport by now." Ethan studied the system architecture on Marcus's screen. It looked legitimate, the kind of setup someone would build if they were genuinely trying to make something bulletproof. "Okay, I'm glad you didn't walk away." Vanessa smiled, small and genuine. "For what it's worth, I'm glad you took the job." They walked outside together into air that smelled like rain and car exhaust. Vanessa's driver was waiting. Nathan was taking the subway. They stood there for a moment that stretched longer than it should, 2 people who'd somehow become something like friends, despite every professional boundary suggesting they shouldn't. "Good night, Nathan." "Good night, Vanessa." He watched her car pull away, then headed for the subway, thinking about fights worth having and people worth fighting for, and the strange relief of not being alone in believing work could actually matter. His phone buzzed with a text from Caleb via Mrs. Pacheco. Robot arm broke. Need help fixing. Are you almost home? Nathan smiled and typed back, 20 minutes. Don't try to fix it yourself, you'll make it worse. That's what you always say, and I'm always fine. That's because I stop you from making it worse. Wait for me. Fine, but hurry. Nathan hurried because his son needed him, and a broken robot arm was exactly the kind of problem he knew how to solve, unlike everything else in his life, which seemed to get more complicated by the day. But as he descended into the subway, joining crowds of people heading home to their own complicated lives, Nathan realized something had shifted. The grief was still there, would always be there, but it wasn't the only thing anymore. There was work that mattered, a team that trusted him, a son who built robots and asked for help fixing them. And somewhere in a car heading toward a penthouse apartment, a woman who fought battles she shouldn't have to fight because she refused to believe the world couldn't be better. Nathan didn't know what any of it meant, but for the first time in 2 years, he wasn't completely sure he wanted to. The robot arm was beyond saving. Nathan sat on the living room floor examining the twisted servo motor while Caleb hovered anxiously beside him, explaining for the third time how the arm had just stopped working. It wasn't his fault. He'd been careful. It just broke. Buddy, it's okay. Things break. Nathan set down the mangled pieces. We'll order a new servo, stronger one this time. But I was so close to finishing the gripper mechanism. Caleb's voice carried the particular frustration of a child who understood complex systems, but not yet the patience required to build them. It was supposed to pick up objects by weight distribution, not just basic grabbing. Then we'll build it better. Engineering is iterative. You build, it breaks, you figure out why, you build it stronger. Nathan ruffled his son's hair. Besides, I'm pretty sure you burned out this servo by overloading it. What were you trying to lift? Caleb looked guilty. Mrs. Pacheco's coffee mug. The ceramic one, the big one? I thought if it could lift that, it could lift anything. Sam, Nathan tried not to smile. That's actually pretty solid reasoning. Flawed execution, but solid reasoning. They ordered the new servo online, Caleb narrating exactly which specifications mattered, and why, while Nathan added it to the cart. This was their rhythm now. Broken robots and debugging sessions, and small victories built from trial and error. Sarah would have loved watching Caleb's brain work, would have understood his tangents and obsessions better than Nathan sometimes did. The doorbell rang. Mrs. Pacheco never rang, just used her key. Nathan checked the security camera feed on his phone and saw Marcus standing in the hallway holding what looked like Thai takeout. Did you order food? Caleb asked. No, but your Uncle Marcus apparently did. Nathan opened the door. This is a surprise. Can a guy visit his best friend? Marcus stepped inside, distributing takeout containers. I brought Pad CU, spring rolls, and that mango sticky rice Caleb likes. Caleb's eyes lit up. The good kind from the place downtown? The only kind worth eating. Now go wash your hands, kiddo. Adults need to talk boring work stuff. After Caleb disappeared toward the bathroom, Marcus's smile faded. We need to talk. Nathan's stomach tightened. What happened? Nothing yet, but there's noise. David's been talking to board members, raising questions about project timelines and cost overruns. There are no cost overruns. We're under budget. I know that. You know that. David knows that. Marcus set down the food, but he's framing it like Vanessa's letting you operate without oversight. Like the project is a black box she won't let finance audit. That's completely... We have weekly financial reviews. Rachel sends reports to finance every Monday, which David is conveniently ignoring while he builds a narrative. Marcus lowered his voice. He's also been asking questions about you and Vanessa, whether there's something inappropriate happening, whether her judgment is compromised. Nathan felt cold. There's nothing inappropriate. We barely interact outside of work meetings. I know, but he's got people looking for anything that suggests otherwise. Texts, emails, suspicious meetings. What suspicious meetings? We had one conversation at the retreat and exactly 0 private interaction since then, unless you count elevator small talk. Nathan. Marcus grabbed his shoulder. I'm not accusing you, I'm warning you. David's building a case, and he's patient. He'll wait for any small thing he can blow up into scandal. Why? What does he gain? If he can prove Vanessa made a major promotion based on personal feelings instead of merit, he undermines her authority, makes the board question her judgment, opens the door for them to install new leadership. Marcus met his eyes, meaning someone more pliable, someone like David. Caleb returned, oblivious to the tension. Can we eat now? I'm starving. They ate dinner, making small talk about robots and school, and everything except the conversation Nathan and Marcus needed to finish. Caleb showed Marcus his code, explained his weight distribution gripper concept with the enthusiasm of someone who'd found his calling at 8 years old. Marcus asked good questions, made appropriate impressed noises, and for a little while everything felt normal. After Caleb went to bed, Nathan and Marcus sat in the living room with beers. Neither of them was really drinking. I didn't ask for this, Nathan said quietly. Any of it. The promotion, the attention, the politics. I know, but you're in it now. Marcus studied his beer. Look, you're doing good work, legitimately good work that's saving lives. Don't let David's games make you doubt that. But you need to be smart about optics. Meaning what? Meaning no more late-night text conversations with Vanessa. No private meetings without witnesses. No situations that could be misinterpreted. Marcus held up his hand before Nathan could protest. I'm not saying there's anything happening. I'm saying protect yourself from accusations that something is. Nathan thought about midnight texts about engineering and exhaustion, about elevator conversations where he'd seen past the CEO to the person underneath, about standing outside the building talking about why work mattered while her driver waited. We're just colleagues, he said, but it sounded uncertain even to him. Are you? Marcus asked gently. Because from the outside, it looks like you're the first person she's let close in years. And you look at her like she's the first person who's understood you since Sarah died. Maybe that's friendship. Maybe it's professional respect. But it's something, Nathan. And something is enough for people like David. Nathan didn't have an answer for that because Marcus might be right, and that terrified him more than the politics did. Marcus left around 11. Nathan cleaned up the takeout containers and sat in the dark living room thinking about perception and reality and the impossible space between them. His phone sat on the coffee table, silent. No late-night texts tonight. No questions about sleep patterns and sentence structure. He should feel relieved. Instead, he felt alone in a way he hadn't since the first year after Sarah died. The next morning, Nathan arrived at the office to find Rachel waiting with coffee and a grim expression. Finance is requesting a full project audit, she said without preamble. David Goldman's signature on the request. They want access to everything. Budgets, timelines, personnel decisions, communications. Let them audit. We've got nothing to hide. It's not about hiding. It's about finding something to spin. Rachel handed him the coffee. They'll look at every decision you made, every resource allocation, every overtime approval. If they find one thing that looks questionable, even if it's completely justified, they'll use it. Then we make sure everything is bulletproof. Nathan, it's already bulletproof. That's not the point. She looked frustrated. The point is that David wants to create the appearance of impropriety. Real or not, doesn't matter if he can make it look real. The audit started that afternoon. 2 finance analysts Nathan had never met appeared with laptops and spreadsheets, requesting documentation for every expense over $500. They were polite but thorough, asking questions designed to find cracks in decision-making processes. This infrastructure upgrade in March, one analyst said, highlighting a line item. That was 40% over initial estimates. Why wasn't that flagged for review? Because the initial estimates were based on incomplete information, Nathan explained. Once we started deployment, we discovered the hospital networks couldn't handle the data load. We had to upgrade or the system wouldn't work. Rachel documented the change request and got approval from Ms. Sinclair directly, not through normal channels. Because it was time sensitive. Waiting for committee approval would have delayed deployment by 3 weeks. The analyst made a note. Nathan watched him write, feeling like every justified decision was being cataloged as evidence of something sinister. It went on for days. Every choice questioned, every judgment second-guessed. Nathan's team grew tense watching auditors dissect their work like it was crime scene evidence. Rachel pulled him aside after the 3rd day. They're not finding anything, she said. Because there's nothing to find. But they're building a narrative about you having too much autonomy, making expensive decisions without oversight, getting special treatment. What do you want me to do? I did everything by the book. I know, but the book is written by people who want you to fail. She hesitated. There's something else. They're requesting your personal communications with Vanessa. Emails, texts, anything that could show inappropriate relationship dynamics. Nathan's blood went cold. They can if they frame it as investigating potential conflicts of interest. Rachel's expression was sympathetic. Look, I've read your emails. You've got nothing to worry about. But they'll take the most innocent interaction and make it look suspicious. Can you explain why Ms. Sinclair texted you at midnight? Why were you alone with her outside the building? That kind of thing. We were talking about work. I believe you, but they'll make it sound like something else. Nathan went home that night feeling like the walls were closing in. He'd done everything right, worked harder than anyone, delivered results, maintained professional boundaries. And somehow that wasn't enough because people like David didn't need truth, just leverage. Caleb noticed his mood at dinner. Are you okay, Dad? Just work stuff. Nothing for you to worry about. Is someone being mean to you? Nathan looked at his son's worried face and tried to find a way to explain corporate politics to an 8-year-old. Some people don't like that I got promoted quickly. They think I didn't earn it. But you're really smart. Of course you earned it. Thanks, buddy, but sometimes being smart isn't enough. Sometimes politics matters more than being good at your job. Caleb frowned. That's stupid. It really is. Then why do you stay? Because the work matters. We're building something that saves people's lives. That's worth dealing with stupid politics. Caleb considered this with the seriousness he brought to debugging code. Mom always said you were stubborn. She did? Yeah. She said you were the most stubborn person she'd ever met, and that's why she married you. Because you never gave up on things that mattered. Nathan's throat tightened. Caleb never talked about Sarah, had actively avoided her memory for 2 years. Hearing him quote her casually, like the wound had finally scabbed over enough to touch, felt like grief and relief tangled together. She was pretty stubborn, too, Nathan managed. I know. That's why I'm double stubborn. Genetic inheritance. Caleb pushed food around his plate. I think you should keep doing your job. The people who say you didn't earn it are wrong. When did you get so wise? I've always been wise. You just don't always notice because you're busy being sad. The honesty hit Nathan like cold water. Am I still that sad? Caleb looked up, dark eyes evaluating. Less than you were. You smile more now. Sometimes you even laugh at my jokes. Your jokes are terrible. They're excellent, and you know it. Caleb grinned. See? You almost smiled. Progress. That night, Nathan lay awake thinking about his son's casual observation. You're busy being sad, and realizing that grief had become such a default state, he'd stopped noticing when it wasn't the only thing anymore. Work had given him purpose. His team had given him belonging. And somewhere in the chaos, he'd started building a life that wasn't just survival. His phone buzzed, a text from Vanessa. I heard about the audit. I'm sorry. This is my fault. Nathan stared at the message, Marcus's warning echoing in his head. No more late-night text conversations. Protect yourself from accusations. But Vanessa sounded genuinely upset, and leaving her on read felt cruel. He typed, not your fault. David's just doing what David does. He's using you to get to me. That's not fair to you. Life's not fair. I've learned that lesson already. A longer pause this time. Then, I should have seen this coming. Should have protected you better. I'm a grown man. I don't need protecting. Everyone needs protecting sometimes. Even stubborn men who pretend they don't. Nathan smiled despite everything. Did Marcus tell you I was stubborn? Marcus didn't need to tell me. You argued with me about bandwidth requirements for 20 minutes in front of the entire board. That's peak stubbornness. That's peak being right and refusing to back down. Same thing. Nathan knew he should end the conversation, should follow Marcus's advice and maintain professional distance. Instead, he found himself typing, how do you deal with it? People constantly undermining your decisions, questioning your judgment, looking for ways to tear you down. The response took several minutes. When it came, it was longer than her usual terse messages. I remind myself why I built this company. Not for them, For me. For everyone who was ever told they weren't good enough, smart enough, ruthless enough to win. Every time someone like David tries to make me fail, I succeed harder. Out of spite, mostly. That's extremely healthy. Never claimed to be healthy. Just claimed to be effective. Fair point, Nathan. I know this is hard. I know you didn't sign up for corporate warfare, but you're doing important work, and I won't let David destroy that. Trust me? Nathan stared at those two words. Trust me. As if trust was simple, as if he hadn't learned the hard way that trusting the wrong people, the wrong systems, the wrong safety measures could cost everything. But Vanessa had fought for his project when finance wanted to cut it, had defended his decisions when executives questioned them, had never once made him feel like his grief disqualified him from doing meaningful work. I trust you, he typed back. Good. Get some sleep. Tomorrow, we fight back. Nathan put his phone down and closed his eyes, but sleep was elusive. His brain churned through scenarios. What the audit might find, how David would spin innocent decisions into scandal, whether Marcus was right about perception mattering more than reality. Somewhere across the city, Vanessa was probably still awake too, fighting battles she'd been fighting since long before Nathan arrived. He wondered what that cost her, maintaining perfect composure while people waited for her to crack. Wondered if she ever got tired of being strong. The next morning brought a new crisis. Nathan arrived to find his team gathered in the conference room, Rachel standing at the head of the table with her laptop open and an expression that made his stomach drop. What happened? Deployment issue at Seattle Memorial. The diagnostic system flagged a patient for immediate cardiac intervention, but the attending physician overrode it. Turns out the system was right. Patient coded 40 minutes later. They saved him, but barely. Rachel pulled up charts showing the timeline. The hospital's reviewing the incident. If they conclude the system caused confusion or delayed treatment, we could lose the entire Seattle contract. But the system was correct, Nathan said. It did exactly what it was designed to do. The doctor ignored it, which the hospital will frame as the system not integrating smoothly with existing workflows, creating decision fatigue, undermining physician authority. Pick your PR-friendly excuse. Rachel looked exhausted. David's already heard about it. He's calling an emergency meeting with the board for this afternoon. Of course he is. Nathan grabbed coffee from the side table, his hands not quite steady. Okay, we need the complete data. Patient vitals, system output, timeline of medical decisions. What the physician's stated reason was for overriding the alert, already pulling it. Rachel gestured to her team, who were frantically typing. But Nathan, even if we prove the system was right, David's going to argue this shows we rushed deployment, that we didn't adequately train hospital staff, that you prioritize speed over safety. We had 8 weeks of training, comprehensive documentation, regular check-ins with hospital administration. I know, it won't matter. He'll say 8 weeks wasn't enough, documentation wasn't clear enough, check-ins weren't frequent enough. Rachel met his eyes. He's going to use this to argue the entire project should be paused pending review. The room went silent. Pausing the project meant stopping deployments, which meant patients who could have been saved would die waiting for bureaucrats to feel comfortable with innovation. Nathan had spent 3 months building this, had pushed his team to the breaking point, had fought for every resource and approval and incremental victory. No, he said flatly. We're not pausing anything. Nathan, the system works. It's saving lives. One doctor making a bad judgment call doesn't change that. He turned to the team. I need ironclad evidence that we did everything right. Training records, system logs, communication with Seattle Memorial staff, everything. If David wants to argue we rushed deployment, we prove we were meticulous. His team scattered to their tasks. Rachel lingered. You're going to fight him head on, she said. Not a question. What choice do I have? You could play politics, apologize for moving too fast, promise additional oversight, give David something to claim as victory while quietly continuing the work. I'm terrible at politics. I noticed. She almost smiled. For what it's worth, I think you're right. The system does work. Pausing would be cowardly. Then help me prove it. Simbol. They spent the next 4 hours building a case, every training session documented, every communication archived, video footage of Seattle Memorial staff actually praising the system 2 weeks earlier. The data was overwhelming. They'd done everything by the book and then some. The emergency board meeting started at 2. Nathan walked into the conference room to find David already presenting. Slides showing the Seattle incident framed to look like catastrophic failure. This near miss illustrates the fundamental recklessness of this deployment, David was saying. Mr. Brooks pushed an untested system into live medical environments without adequate safeguards, and we're lucky a patient didn't die as a result. The system isn't untested, Nathan interrupted. It's been through 18 months of development and validation, and the patient didn't die because the system correctly identified cardiac risk that the attending physician missed. David's smile was thin. The physician's judgment is being questioned because your system created confusion. That's the definition of poor implementation. The physician's judgment is being questioned because he was wrong and the system was right. Nathan pulled up his own presentation. Here's the patient's cardiac data: elevated troponin, irregular rhythm, clear signs of acute coronary syndrome. Our system flagged it immediately. The physician dismissed it as anxiety and ordered a sedative. 20 minutes later, the patient went into full arrest. Helen Chen leaned forward. What was the physician's stated reason for overriding the system? Nathan pulled up the incident report. He said the patient's symptoms didn't match his clinical experience and he trusted his judgment over algorithm output. That's exactly the problem, David said. You've created a system that undermines physician authority. I've created a system that catches what humans miss. Nathan's voice went hard. Doctors are brilliant. They're also human. They have biases, blind spots, bad days. This system doesn't replace them. It augments them. And in this case, it tried to save a life that the physician's ego nearly cost. That's a serious accusation. It's a factual statement based on medical records and system logs. Do you want to see them? Vanessa's voice cut through the rising tension. I think we should review the complete data before making any decisions about the project's future. David turned on her. With all due respect, Vanessa, your judgment on this project is compromised. You've given Mr. Brooks unprecedented autonomy, defended decisions that should have gone through proper channels, and refused to acknowledge clear warning signs that deployment was moving too fast. My judgment is based on results, Vanessa said coolly. The system has a 94% accuracy rate, has caught 17 critical diagnoses that would have been missed otherwise, and has 0 false positives that resulted in patient harm. Those are facts, not feelings. And one near miss that could have been a wrongful death lawsuit, which was prevented by the system working exactly as designed. Vanessa's gray eyes were ice. David, I understand you have concerns about project oversight. Those concerns are noted, but attacking Nathan's competence when the data clearly supports his decisions suggests this is about something other than patient safety. The room went very quiet. David's face flushed. Are you suggesting I have ulterior motives? I'm suggesting that if you spent half as much energy supporting innovation as you spend trying to undermine it, this company would be better for it. Vanessa stood. The board will review the complete data. If there are legitimate concerns about deployment safety, we'll address them. But we're not pausing a project that's saving lives because one doctor had an ego problem. She walked out. The meeting dissolved into uncomfortable silence before Helen Chen cleared her throat. I'd like to see the complete incident report and system data before our next board session, she said. Mr. Brooks, can you have that ready by Friday? Yes, ma'am. And David, Helen's voice took on an edge. I'd suggest focusing your concerns on actual problems rather than perceived ones. This board values results, not politics. Nathan left the meeting feeling like he'd survived something but wasn't sure what. Rachel was waiting in the hallway. That was either career-defining or career-ending, she said. Hard to tell which. Vanessa defended me. Vanessa eviscerated David in front of the entire board. That's not defending, that's declaring war. Rachel started walking toward the elevators, which means David's going to come back harder. You know that, right? Nathan knew. But he was too exhausted to care about the politics anymore. He'd told the truth, shown the data, defended work that actually mattered. If that wasn't enough, then maybe he didn't belong in this world anyway. His phone buzzed, a text from Marcus. What the hell happened in that board meeting? David's losing his mind, and Vanessa just told 3 executives to either support the project or find new jobs. Nathan typed back. Things escalated. No kidding. David's already drafting a formal complaint about hostile work environment. This is bad, Nathan. The system works. That's what matters. The system working won't matter if David gets you both fired. Nathan put his phone away without responding. He was tired of people telling him to be careful, play politics, worry about perception over reality. Sarah used to tell him he was stubborn to the point of self-destruction. Maybe she was right. He made it back to his office and found Vanessa standing at his window, looking out over the city like she was surveying territory she'd conquered but wasn't sure she wanted to keep. You shouldn't have done that, Nathan said. She turned. Defended you? That's my job. You made an enemy of David permanently. He's not going to forget being humiliated in front of the board. David was already my enemy. I just stopped pretending he wasn't. Vanessa crossed her arms. He's been undermining me for 2 years, questioning every decision, building coalitions with board members who think a woman CEO is a diversity statement instead of an actual leader. I'm done playing nice. This isn't about playing nice. This is about you risking your position for what? A project that saves lives? A team doing extraordinary work? An architect who refuses to compromise quality for politics? She stepped closer. Nathan, she is. I built this company so I could make decisions based on what's right instead of what's profitable. If I start sacrificing good people to appease men like David, what's the point? Nathan didn't have an answer for that. Vanessa looked fierce and exhausted, like someone who'd been fighting so long she'd forgotten how to put down the sword. Thank you, he said quietly, for defending the work. I wasn't just defending the work. Her voice softened. David was right about one thing. My judgment is compromised, but not the way he thinks. What do you mean? Vanessa was quiet for a long moment, and Nathan watched something shift in her expression, some internal debate resolving itself in a direction that looked like surrender. I mean, you're the first person in years who talks to me like I'm human instead of a title, who sees the work instead of the net worth, who... She stopped, seemingly catching herself. I shouldn't be saying this. Why not? Because it's exactly what people like David are looking for. Evidence that I'm making decisions emotionally instead of rationally. Are you? Nathan asked. Making decisions emotionally? I don't know anymore. Vanessa's laugh was brittle. I've spent so long building walls between personal and professional that I'm not sure I know the difference. But I know I trust your judgment. I know I respect your work. And I know that defending you today felt right in a way most of my decisions don't. They stood there in Nathan's office as afternoon light slanted through windows. 2 people who'd somehow stumbled past professional boundaries into territory neither of them knew how to navigate. Marcus warned me, Nathan said, about perception, about being careful. Marcus is smart. He said people think that there's something... Nathan couldn't finish the sentence. I know what people think. Vanessa's expression was unreadable. Are they right? The question hung in the air between them, dangerous and necessary. Nathan thought about late-night texts and elevator conversations and the specific loneliness of being understood by someone who shouldn't understand you. I don't know, he admitted. I don't know what this is. Neither do I. Vanessa looked away. But I know it's scaring me, which doesn't happen often. Why? Because caring about people gives them power to hurt you. I learned that lesson young, and I've built a very successful life, avoiding it. She met his eyes again. But you're making that difficult. Nathan's heart was doing something complicated in his chest. I should probably say we need to maintain professional boundaries, that Marcus is right about being careful. You probably should, but I don't want to. Neither do I. Vanessa's voice was barely above a whisper, which is a problem. Before Nathan could respond, his phone rang. Caleb's school. His stomach dropped as he answered. Mr. Brooks? This is Principal Matthews. Caleb's fine, but we need you to come pick him up. There was an incident. What kind of incident? He got into a physical altercation with another student. He's not hurt, but school policy requires... I'll be there in 20 minutes. Nathan hung up, already grabbing his jacket. Vanessa was watching him with concern. Caleb? She asked. School fight. I have to go. He paused at the door. We should probably talk about whatever this is. We should, Vanessa agreed. But not today. Go take care of your son. Nathan left, his mind churning with too many crises happening simultaneously. The board meeting, David's vendetta, Vanessa's admission, and now Caleb, who never fought, who avoided conflict like he avoided talking about Sarah, getting into a physical altercation at school. He drove through afternoon traffic, trying not to imagine all the worst-case scenarios his brain helpfully provided. By the time he reached the school, his hands were shaking on the steering wheel. Principal Matthews met him in the office where Caleb sat looking small and furious, his shirt torn and lip bleeding. What happened? Nathan asked, kneeling in front of his son. Caleb's jaw was set in an expression Nathan recognized from Sarah, stubborn silence that meant he was done talking. The other student made comments about Caleb's mother, Principal Matthews said carefully, specifically about her being dead. Caleb responded physically. Was I? My son. Nathan's vision went red. What exactly did he say? Mr. Brooks, I don't think... What did he say to my son? The principal sighed. That Caleb's mother was probably glad she died, so she didn't have to deal with him anymore. Nathan saw Caleb flinch, saw his son's hands curl into fists, and something broke open in his chest. He pulled Caleb into a hug, feeling the skinny shoulders shake with suppressed crying. We're going home, Nathan said, and that other kid's parents are getting a call about bullying. Mr. Brooks, I understand you're upset, but there's a zero-tolerance policy. Your zero-tolerance policy can go to hell. Nathan stood, keeping Caleb close. My son defended his mother's memory after another student said something unconscionably cruel. If you punish him for that, I'll be having conversations with the school board about your bullying prevention program's obvious failures. He walked out before the principal could respond, Caleb's hand tight in his, both of them shaking with rage and grief and the terrible weight of loss that never really got lighter, just learned new ways to hurt. They drove home in silence. Nathan ordered pizza neither of them wanted and sat on the couch while Caleb finally broke, crying with the kind of full-body sobs he'd been holding back for 2 years. He said Mom was glad to be gone, Caleb choked out. He said she probably hated me and that's why she left. Caleb, listen to me. Nathan pulled his son closer. Your mother loved you more than anything in the world. More than me, more than her work, more than her own life. She didn't leave. She was taken. And she would have given anything, everything, to still be here with you. But she's not here. Caleb's voice was small and broken. And I'm tired of people asking where she is or saying I'm lucky I don't have to deal with a mom. I'm not lucky. I'm just sad all the time and I don't know how to stop. Nathan felt his own tears coming and didn't try to stop them. I don't know how to stop either, buddy. But we're sad together. That counts for something. They sat there while pizza got cold and evening turned to night. Two people trying to carry grief too heavy for either of them alone, but somehow manageable when shared. Eventually, Caleb fell asleep against Nathan's shoulder. Nathan carried him to bed, tucked him in, and stood in the doorway watching his son's chest rise and fall with sleep's steady rhythm. His phone buzzed. A text from Vanessa. Is everything okay? Nathan should probably not respond. Should maintain professional distance like Marcus warned. Should protect himself from perception and politics and all the complicated ways caring about people made everything harder. Instead, he typed, Caleb got in a fight defending Sarah's memory. Kid said something cruel. He's okay, but it's been a rough night. I'm sorry. Is there anything I can do? Not unless you can explain to an 8-year-old why grief doesn't have an expiration date. The response took a while, then, tell him it gets different, not gone. That some days will hurt less. That remembering someone you loved isn't weakness. It's proof you were strong enough to love in the first place. Nathan stared at that message, at words that sounded like they came from someone who understood loss in ways she didn't talk about. He wanted to ask what she was running from, what grief she carried underneath all that control. Instead, he typed, thank you. That's exactly what he needs to hear. You're a good father, Nathan. Don't forget that. He put his phone down and sat in the dark living room thinking about identity, how you could be a father and an architect and a widower and someone's colleague all at once. And none of those things captured who you actually were underneath the labels. Vanessa had called him human in her office. Like that was rare. Like most people she dealt with had forgotten how. Nathan was starting to understand why she'd built walls between personal and professional. Why caring about people felt dangerous when you'd spent years learning to protect yourself. He was also starting to understand that some walls, once you saw past them, were impossible to rebuild. Outside his window, the city lights burned against darkness. Millions of people living complicated lives full of grief and work and the messy business of being human. Nathan sat in his dark living room and let himself admit, just for a moment, that he was tired of being careful. That maybe some risks were worth taking even when they terrified you. That Vanessa Sinclair was either going to save his career or destroy it, and he wasn't sure which possibility scared him more. Morning came with the kind of exhaustion that sleep didn't fix. Nathan made pancakes because he'd promised, extra chocolate chips because Caleb needed something good after yesterday's devastation. His son appeared in the kitchen with puffy eyes and a split lip that looked worse in daylight. "Does it hurt?" Nathan asked, sliding a plate across the counter. "Not really." Caleb poked at his pancakes. "Am I in trouble? With me?" "No. With the school?" "Probably. With that other kid's parents, if they have any sense?" "They should be." Nathan sat down across from him. "But we need to talk about what happens next. I know. No fighting, even when people say terrible things." Caleb's voice was flat, reciting rules he didn't believe. "That's not what I was going to say." Nathan waited until Caleb looked up. "I was going to say that defending someone you love isn't wrong. How you did it might have been, but the reason you did it? That's human. That's real. And I'm not going to tell you to stop feeling things just because the world thinks you should be polite about grief." Caleb blinked. "So I'm not grounded? You're taking a day off school while I sort out the principal. We'll call it mental health leave." Nathan took a breath. "And we're going to actually talk about Mom. Not avoid it. Not pretend it doesn't hurt. Actually talk." "I don't know how." "Neither do I. But we'll figure it out together." They spent the morning doing exactly that, haltingly, awkwardly, with long silences between words. Caleb talked about memories he'd been afraid to touch, things Sarah used to say, the way she'd explained complex math like it was storytelling. Nathan talked about missing her, about the guilt of moving forward, about how loving someone didn't end just because they were gone. By lunch, they were both wrecked, but somehow lighter, like lancing a wound that had been festering for 2 years. Nathan's phone rang while they were attempting grilled cheese. "Marcus." "Please tell me you didn't threaten the principal with a school board investigation," Marcus said without preamble. "How did you—" "The principal called HR. Something about hostile parent behavior and threats of legal action." "Nathan, what the hell?" Nathan moved to the living room, lowering his voice. "Some kid told Caleb his mother was glad she died so she didn't have to deal with him." Caleb punched him. "The principal tried to enforce zero-tolerance policy. I responded poorly." "Bomb says, Silence. Then Marcus swore, long and creative. Okay, I'll handle HR. You focus on Caleb, but Nathan, you need to be careful. David's already building a case that you're unstable, and threatening school officials doesn't help." "I didn't threaten anyone. I just pointed out that their bullying prevention clearly isn't working if students think dead mother jokes are acceptable playground banter." "I'm sure you were very reasonable about it." Marcus sighed. "Look, take today. Be with Caleb. But tomorrow, you need to come back and act like everything's fine, because David's watching for any sign of weakness." After they hung up, Nathan stood at the window watching traffic move below, thinking about weakness and strength and how the line between them kept shifting depending on who was watching. Caleb appeared at his elbow. "Was that about me getting in trouble?" "No, about me getting in trouble for defending you getting in trouble." Nathan ruffled his son's hair. "We're a troublemaking team, apparently." "Good. Mom always said normal people were boring." They spent the afternoon rebuilding the robot's gripper mechanism with the new servo that had arrived. Caleb explained weight distribution calculations while Nathan held pieces in place. And for a few hours, the world narrowed to problems that could be solved with engineering and patience. It was almost 6 when the doorbell rang. Nathan wasn't expecting anyone. He checked the camera feed and froze. Vanessa Sinclair stood in his apartment building hallway, holding a bag from the Thai place Caleb liked. Nathan opened the door before his brain caught up to question why his CEO was standing outside his apartment. "Hi," Vanessa said, and she looked uncertain in a way he'd never seen. "I'm sorry. I should have texted first. I just thought, after yesterday, I wanted to make sure Caleb was okay. How did you get my address?" "HR database. Probably a violation of some policy." She held up the bag. "I brought mango sticky rice. Marcus mentioned Caleb liked it, and I thought, I'm not sure what I thought. This was stupid. I should go." "Wait." Nathan stepped back. "Come in. Caleb will be thrilled about the mango sticky rice." Vanessa walked into his small apartment and Nathan saw it through her eyes. Cramped living room, secondhand furniture, walls covered with Caleb's drawings and diagrams, evidence of a life built from necessity rather than choice. She probably lived in a penthouse with views and marble countertops and furniture that cost more than his cars. But she just smiled at the robot parts scattered across the coffee table. Ambitious gripper design. You can tell that from looking at servo placement. I used to build robots before I built companies. She set down the food. "Is Caleb around?" "Caleb," Nathan called. "We have a visitor." His son appeared from his room, stopped dead when he saw Vanessa, then looked at Nathan with an expression that clearly said, "What is my boss doing in our apartment?" "Hi, Caleb," Vanessa said. "I'm Vanessa. I work with your dad. I heard you had a rough day yesterday, and I wanted to check on you." Caleb studied her with the intense evaluation of a child deciding whether an adult was trustworthy. "You're the CEO lady from the article Mrs. Pacheco showed me." "Guilty, though I prefer Vanessa to CEO lady." She knelt down to examine the robot. "This is impressive work. Custom gripper design?" "Yeah, it's supposed to adjust grip strength based on object weight, but the calibration is tricky." Caleb's suspicion was melting into enthusiasm. The force sensors keep giving inconsistent readings. "Have you tried a capacitive sensor array instead of resistive? Better precision, less drift over time." Caleb's eyes lit up. "I didn't know those existed. How do they work?" Nathan watched them fall into technical discussion. Vanessa explaining sensor physics, while Caleb asked questions that would lose most adults in 30 seconds. She was patient, precise, treating his 8-year-old son's questions with the same seriousness she'd give a board presentation. They ended up on the floor surrounded by robot parts. Caleb explaining his entire navigation algorithm, while Vanessa sketched improvements on notebook paper. Nathan stood in his kitchen unpacking Thai food and trying to process the surreal image of a billionaire CEO helping his son debug code in their mediocre apartment. "Dad," Caleb called. "Vanessa says if we use interrupt-driven sensor polling instead of my timer-based approach, we could cut response latency by 60%. "Vanessa's very smart," Nathan said, bringing plates to the coffee table. "But she also needs to eat before the food gets cold." They ate dinner on the living room floor because the dining table was covered in more robot parts and Caleb's homework. Vanessa asked about school, avoided mentioning the fight, listened to Caleb's explanation of why his science teacher didn't understand basic chemistry with the focus most people reserve for quarterly earnings reports. "Your teacher's wrong about the reaction rates," Vanessa said. "Temperature affects molecular collision frequency, which absolutely changes reaction speed. You should show her the Arrhenius equation." "I tried. She said I was being difficult." "You were being correct. There's a difference." Vanessa glanced at Nathan. "Though pick your battles. Sometimes being right isn't worth the fight. That's what Dad says. But Mom used to say if you know you're right, fight until people listen." Nathan went very still. Caleb had mentioned Sarah twice today, after 2 years of silence, and the casual way he dropped her into conversation felt like watching something frozen finally thaw. Vanessa didn't miss a beat. "Your mom sounds like she was smart." "She was really smart. She was an engineer. She built medical equipment that helped people." Caleb's voice was matter-of-fact, like reciting data. "Then she died in a hospital fire because someone else's equipment broke." "I'm sorry," Vanessa said quietly. "That's not fair." "Nothing's fair." Caleb shrugged with 8-year-old philosophy. "But Dad says we keep going anyway because giving up is worse." "Your dad's right about that." "No, madam." After dinner, Caleb wanted to show Vanessa his entire robot collection. 7 different machines in various states of completion, each more complex than the last. She examined each one seriously, asked technical questions, suggested improvements that made Caleb's eyes light up with possibilities. Nathan watched from the doorway, something complicated happening in his chest. This was his life. The modest apartment, the brilliant sun, the evidence of loss everywhere you looked. And Vanessa was treating it like it mattered, like Caleb's robots were as important as quarterly projections, like being here was exactly where she wanted to be. Around 8, Caleb started yawning between sentences. Nathan intervened. "Bedtime, buddy. We've kept Vanessa long enough." "But I wanted to show her the autonomous navigation algorithm. Tomorrow, I promise." Vanessa stood, gathering empty plates. "Besides, you need sleep if you're going to implement those sensor improvements we discussed." Caleb hugged her without warning, quick and fierce, then disappeared to his room. Vanessa stood frozen, looking like she'd been handed something precious and wasn't sure what to do with it. "He doesn't usually do that," Nathan said. "Hug people. He's been pretty closed off since Sarah died." "He's a good kid, really smart. You're doing an incredible job with him." "I'm doing a barely adequate job and hoping I don't screw up too badly." Nathan started cleaning up, needing something to do with his hands. "You didn't have to come here, check on us." "I know. I wanted to." Vanessa helped gather plates, and they fell into an easy rhythm of cleaning up that felt domestic in a way that should have been awkward, but wasn't. "After you left yesterday, I kept thinking about what Caleb must be going through. Kids can be cruel. Grief doesn't have an instruction manual. I wanted him to know someone cared." Nathan stopped washing dishes. "Why?" "Why what? Why do you care? About Caleb, about me, about any of this?" He turned to face her. "You're the CEO of a billion-dollar company. You could be anywhere, doing anything. Instead, you're in my apartment helping an 8-year-old debug robots and making sure we're okay. Why?" Vanessa was quiet for a long time, standing in his cramped kitchen with dish towel in hand, looking more uncertain than Nathan had ever seen her. "Because you're the first people in years who feel real," she said finally. "Everyone else wants something from me. Money, access, approval, validation. You and Caleb just want to build things that matter and survive the day without grief crushing you. That's honest in a way my entire life isn't. That's a pretty low bar for honesty. You'd be surprised how rare it is." She set down the towel. "I've spent 10 years building walls between who I am and who I pretend to be. Professional Vanessa, CEO Vanessa, the version who's always in control and never uncertain. Then you stood on a terrace and told me I was beautiful in the saddest possible way, and something cracked." Nathan's heart was doing complicated things. "What cracked?" "The certainty that staying alone was easier than risking this." Vanessa gestured vaguely between them. "Whatever this is." "And what is this?" "I don't know. I just know I haven't felt this terrified of something in years, which means it probably matters." Nathan stepped closer. "Marcus warned me about perception, about being careful, about how people are watching for any evidence that there's... I know what Marcus warned you. He warned me too." Vanessa didn't back away. "David's building a case. The board is questioning my judgment. Every interaction we have is being analyzed for scandal. Everything sensible says we should maintain professional distance and pretend yesterday's conversation never happened. But I'm tired of making decisions based on fear." Her voice was barely above a whisper. "I'm tired of being alone because it's safer. I'm tired of pretending I don't care about people because caring gives them power to hurt me." "Caring does give people power to hurt you," Nathan said. "I learned that lesson watching my wife die. It doesn't stop being true just because you acknowledge it." "So what do we do?" Nathan thought about Sarah, about the years they'd had and the lifetime they'd lost. Thought about Caleb learning to talk about his mother again. Thought about standing in this kitchen with a woman who'd somehow become important in ways he hadn't intended. "I don't know," he admitted. "But I know I'm tired of being careful too." They stood there in his kitchen that smelled like Thai food and dish soap, close enough to touch but not touching, both of them terrified of what came next. Vanessa's phone buzzed. She checked it and her expression shifted, professional mask sliding back into place. "I need to go. Conference call with Tokyo in 20 minutes. She grabbed her bag, then paused at the door. "Nathan, tomorrow at work." "I know. We're colleagues, professional distance. Nothing to give David ammunition. Right. But she looked disappointed, which made Nathan feel simultaneously better and worse. Thank you for letting me invade your evening. Thank you for checking on Caleb. It meant a lot to him. It meant a lot to me too. She hesitated, then said, tell him the capacitive sensors are available on Amazon. Search for MPR 121. They're $15 and will change his entire gripper design. Then she was gone, leaving Nathan standing in his apartment trying to figure out what had just happened and whether it was the beginning of something or the end of professional judgment. He checked on Caleb, found him already asleep with a notebook full of new robot sketches scattered across his bed. Nathan gathered them carefully, saw designs incorporating Vanessa's suggestions, saw his son's handwriting labeling one diagram, V's sensor idea, test tomorrow. His phone buzzed, a text from Vanessa. I shouldn't have come to your apartment. That was inappropriate, and I'm sorry if I crossed a line. Nathan stared at the message, then typed, you didn't cross a line. Caleb hasn't been that happy in 2 years. Thank you for that. He's a special kid. You should be proud. I am. He thinks you're cool, by the way. Said you're the first grown-up besides me who talks to him like he's smart instead of cute. He is smart, frighteningly so. Where does he get it? His mother. Sarah was brilliant. I just taught computers to be less stupid. Stop doing that. Doing what? Diminishing yourself. You're not just teaching computers. You're building systems that save lives. You're raising an exceptional kid alone. You're surviving loss that would break most people. That's not just anything. Nathan sat on his couch staring at those words, feeling seen in a way that was terrifying and necessary. Thank you, he typed back. For tonight. For everything. Tomorrow we're back to being professional. I know. But tonight was real. I wanted you to know that. Nathan put his phone down and sat in the dark thinking about what was real versus what was sustainable, about the difference between surviving and living, about how Vanessa Sinclair had somehow become the first person since Sarah who made him want to be brave instead of just careful. Morning brought reality crashing back. Nathan dropped Caleb at school with promises to handle the principal's situation, then drove to Sinclair Technologies bracing for whatever fresh crisis David had manufactured overnight. He wasn't disappointed. Rachel met him at the elevator with coffee and bad news. David filed a formal complaint with HR about hostile work environment, she said. Claims Vanessa's creating a culture of favoritism and intimidation using you as the primary example. Of course he did. Nathan took the coffee. What's the actual accusation? That she gave you an unearned promotion, defends your decisions regardless of merit, grants you special access and privileges not available to other employees, and creates a workplace environment where questioning her judgment results in retaliation. Rachel pulled up the complaint on her tablet. He's got testimony from 3 executives claiming they were reprimanded for raising legitimate concerns about your project. Let me guess. The legitimate concerns were thinly veiled attacks disguised as financial responsibility. Doesn't matter. HR has to investigate, which means interviews, document reviews, the whole process. Rachel looked sympathetic. This is going to get ugly. It got ugly fast. By noon, Nathan had been called to HR for preliminary questioning. 2 representatives he'd never met asked about his relationship with Vanessa, the circumstances of his promotion, whether he felt he'd received preferential treatment. Miss Sinclair promoted me because I'm good at my job, Nathan said for the 3rd time. Everything else is speculation. But you did meet with her privately multiple times outside normal business hours. We had 1 conversation at a corporate retreat about work-life balance and 1 elevator conversation about project logistics. If that counts as multiple private meetings, you should investigate everyone who's ever shared an elevator. Mr. Brooks, we're just trying to establish facts. The facts are that I do good work, my project is succeeding, and David Goldman is weaponizing HR policy because he's uncomfortable with a woman making decisions he doesn't agree with. The HR representative made a note. That's a serious accusation. It's an observable pattern. David questions every decision Vanessa makes. He's been trying to undermine her authority since before I joined this company. Using me as leverage is just his latest strategy. That's your interpretation. It's the interpretation of anyone paying attention. Nathan stood. Are we done? I have actual work to do. He left feeling like he'd just made everything worse, which Rachel confirmed when he got back to his office. You can't call out systemic sexism in an HR investigation about favoritism, she said. That's like pouring gasoline on a fire and expecting it to go out. What was I supposed to say? That David's right? That I don't deserve this position? You're supposed to be bland and professional and let HR conclude there's no case. Rachel rubbed her temples. But instead you went on the offensive, which makes you look defensive, which makes it seem like you're hiding something. I'm not hiding anything. I know that, but perception matters. She lowered her voice. Nathan, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest. Is there something happening between you and Vanessa? Because if there is, you need to disclose it before HR finds evidence, and this turns into a termination situation. Nathan thought about last night. Vanessa in his apartment asked, the conversation in his kitchen, the admission that they were both tired of being careful. No, he said, and it was technically true. We're colleagues, friends maybe, but nothing that violates company policy. Friends. Rachel's tone suggested she heard everything he wasn't saying. Okay, then keep it that way, because HR is going to be watching every interaction, analyzing every email, looking for proof that David's right. The next week was surveillance disguised as investigation. Nathan felt eyes on him constantly, colleagues watching who he talked to, how long meetings ran, whether Vanessa treated him differently than other employees. He started eating lunch at his desk to avoid the cafeteria politics. Stopped texting Vanessa entirely. Kept interactions professional to the point of coldness. Vanessa did the same. In meetings, she was impartial, technical, giving him neither special attention nor special consideration. To outside observers, they were exactly what they should be. CEO, an employee with appropriate professional distance. But Nathan caught her watching him sometimes when she thought no one was looking, saw the same frustration he felt reflected in her carefully neutral expression. The project continued despite the investigation. They deployed to 3 more hospitals. The diagnostic system caught 2 early-stage cancers, identified a rare autoimmune disorder, prevented a surgical error that would have been catastrophic. Rachel compiled the results into reports that made even the skeptics pause. But good work didn't stop HR from requesting Nathan's phone records, email archives, calendar history. Didn't stop David from finding 3 more executives willing to claim Vanessa's leadership style was problematic. Didn't stop the whisper campaign suggesting Nathan had slept his way into a promotion and was now paying the price for poor judgment. Marcus tried to help. David's overplaying his hand. The board sees this for what it is, a power play. Helen Chen told me privately that she's losing patience with David's vendetta. Great. So I just have to survive being investigated for crimes I didn't commit while my reputation gets destroyed. Nathan was past caring about professional courtesy. Nathan was past caring about, this is exactly what you warned me about. I should have listened. You should have been more careful, but you're not wrong for doing the work. Marcus hesitated. For what it's worth, Vanessa's being investigated too. Formal board inquiry into her decision-making process, leadership style, whether she's emotionally compromised. Because she defended good work. Because she defended you specifically, multiple times, in ways that looked personal. Marcus met his eyes. Nathan, I know there's nothing happening, but it looks like something's happening. And in corporate politics, looking guilty is the same as being guilty. That night, Nathan sat in his apartment helping Caleb implement the new sensor array while his phone stayed silent. No texts from Vanessa. No late-night conversations about work and loss and the complicated business of being human. Just professional distance and the hollow victory of technically following the rules. Dad? Caleb looked up from his laptop. Is Vanessa okay? She hasn't been back to help with the robot. She's busy with work stuff. Is it because of me? Did I do something wrong? No, buddy. This is grown-up politics. Nothing to do with you. But Caleb looked unconvinced, and Nathan realized his son had gotten attached to someone who treated him like he mattered. And now that person had disappeared without explanation. Just another loss in a childhood already defined by losing people. His phone rang. Unknown number. Nathan almost didn't answer. Mr. Brooks? This is Jennifer Chen from Pacific Herald. I'm doing a piece on workplace culture in tech companies, and I'd love to get your perspective on recent events at Sinclair Technologies. Muscle Nathan's stomach dropped. I don't talk to press. I understand this is sensitive, but sources have indicated there's an ongoing investigation into CEO Vanessa Sinclair's leadership practices, with you as a central figure. I wanted to give you the opportunity to tell your side before the story runs. There is no story. HR investigates complaints. That's standard procedure. But the complaints suggest a pattern of favoritism, possible romantic involvement with a subordinate, decisions made based on personal rather than professional considerations. Nathan hung up. His hands were shaking. The story ran 2 days later. Pacific Herald, page 3 business section, headline reading, Sinclair Technologies CEO faces questions over leadership ethics. It was carefully worded to avoid outright accusation, full of anonymous sources and suggestive language about special treatment and blurred professional boundaries. Nathan's name appeared 6 times. Vanessa's appeared 20. The office was chaos that morning. Reporters camped outside the building. Employees whispered in hallways. HR sent a company-wide memo about not speaking to press without authorization. Nathan made it to his office and found Rachel already there, reading the article on her phone with an expression that said this was exactly what she'd feared. "This is bad," she said, "really bad. The board's meeting this afternoon to discuss damage control." It's all speculation, anonymous sources making claims they can't prove. It's public now. Perception is reality. Rachel looked up. "Nathan, they're going to ask Vanessa to step down, temporarily while the investigation concludes, but effectively it's removal. And they're going to suggest you take a leave of absence, too." "I didn't do anything wrong." "I know. But the company can't afford the PR nightmare of looking like it's protecting executives who break ethical guidelines. Even if you didn't break them, the appearance is enough." Nathan's phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. "Board meeting at 2 p.m. Vanessa's being asked to resign. I'm sorry." Then another text. This one from an unknown number that Nathan somehow knew was Vanessa, even though she'd never texted from a personal phone before. "Don't come to the board meeting. Don't defend me. Let them do what they're going to do. This isn't your fight." Nathan stared at that message, at the resignation in those words, at Vanessa Sinclair, who'd built an empire and refused to compromise and fought for work that mattered, telling him to let her fall alone. He thought about Caleb asking if Vanessa was okay, about his son learning again that people you care about disappear, about the diagnostic system that was saving lives getting caught in political crossfire, about every warning Marcus had given that Nathan had ignored because he'd thought doing good work was enough. Then he thought about Sarah, about the night she died, about standing helpless while systems failed and people made decisions that prioritized everything except what mattered. He'd been helpless then, but he wasn't helpless now. Nathan stood up. "Where's the board meeting?" Rachel's eyes went wide. "Nathan, don't. Vanessa told you not to." "I know what she told me." "Where is it?" "Executive conference room, 23rd floor. But if you walk in there, you're ending your career. You understand that?" "That's..." "Yeah." Nathan grabbed his laptop. "I understand exactly what I'm doing." He walked out before Rachel could stop him, before his common sense could intervene, before fear could override the stubborn refusal to watch someone he cared about get destroyed for doing the right thing. The elevator ride to 23 felt like falling. Nathan's heart hammered against his ribs. His hands were sweating on his laptop. Every rational part of his brain screamed that this was career suicide, that he should turn around, that Marcus and Rachel and every sensible person in his life was right about being careful. But careful hadn't saved Sarah. Careful hadn't protected Caleb from cruel kids and grief that never ended. Careful hadn't made the world fair or just or good. Careful just meant accepting loss as inevitable. The executive conference room doors were closed. Nathan could hear voices inside. David's smug tone, Helen Chen's measured questions, Vanessa's controlled responses. He took a breath and pushed through. 15 faces turned toward him. Board members, executives, Vanessa sitting at the far end looking pale and composed and utterly alone. "Mr. Brooks," Helen Chen said carefully, "this is a closed meeting." "I know." I'm sorry for the interruption, but I have information relevant to this investigation, and I thought the board should hear it before making any decisions. David stood. This is completely inappropriate. Sit down, David. Helen's voice carried authority that made even David obey. She looked at Nathan. You have 5 minutes. Nathan opened his laptop, pulled up files he'd spent the last hour compiling, and faced down 15 of the most powerful people in the tech industry. Vanessa Sinclair did not give me unearned special treatment, he started. She gave me an opportunity to do work that matters. Here's the data proving why. He pulled up metrics: lives saved, diagnostic accuracy, hospital satisfaction ratings, cost-benefit analyses that showed the project wasn't just ethically right, but financially sound. He showed emails proving every decision went through appropriate channels, that Rachel had been involved in all major choices, that the team's success wasn't about one person getting preferential treatment, but about exceptional people doing exceptional work. David claims Ms. Sinclair's judgment is compromise, Nathan continued, but the only compromised judgment I see is treating success as evidence of misconduct. The Seattle incident he cited, the system was correct. The physician was wrong. A patient lived because our algorithm caught what human bias missed. That's not failure. That's exactly what this system was designed to do. Yoshi-san, he turned to face David directly. You've spent 6 months looking for evidence that this project is failing or unethical or proof of favoritism. You haven't found any because it doesn't exist. What you have found is that a woman CEO made a decision you didn't agree with, and you can't accept that her judgment might be better than yours. That's completely out of line, David started. Is it? Because I've watched you question every decision she makes. I've seen you undermine her authority, dismiss her expertise, frame success as suspicion. And now you've weaponized an HR investigation to do what you couldn't do through legitimate means: remove a CEO who refuses to prioritize profit over ethics. The room was silent. Nathan could feel his career ending in real time, but couldn't make himself stop. Vanessa Sinclair is the best leader I've ever worked for. She's demanding, brilliant, and refuses to compromise on work that saves lives. If that's grounds for removal, then this company doesn't deserve her. He looked at Helen Chen. I know appearing here looks like exactly what David's accused us of, but I couldn't watch someone be destroyed for making the right decisions while staying silent to protect myself. He closed his laptop. That's all I have to say. I'll accept whatever consequences you decide are appropriate. Nathan walked out before anyone could respond. Nathan walked out before he could see Vanessa's expression, before the reality of what he'd just done could fully register. He made it to the stairwell before his legs gave out, sat on the stairs with his head in his hands, breathing hard, waiting for security to escort him out. Instead, 20 minutes later, the stairwell door opened and Vanessa appeared. She looked shaken, fierce, like she'd just survived a battle and wasn't sure whether she'd won or lost. That was the stupidest, bravest thing I've ever seen anyone do, she said. I just ended my career. Probably. She sat down beside him on the stairs. But you might have saved mine. What happened? Helen Chen tabled the resignation discussion pending review of your evidence. David tried to claim you were emotionally compromised, which made several board members question why he was so determined to ignore successful outcomes. It's not over, but she stopped, voice catching. Why did you do that? I told you to stay away. Because you were alone and that wasn't fair. Because the work matters more than my career. Because Nathan met her eyes. Because you were right. I'm tired of being careful. I'm tired of watching people suffer because doing the right thing is politically complicated. Vanessa was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. I've spent 10 years believing that staying alone was the only way to protect myself. That caring about people was weakness. That the walls I built were keeping me safe. She shook her head. But you just risked everything to defend me, and I'm realizing that maybe the walls were just keeping me isolated. Vanessa, I need to tell you something about the hospital fire, about Sarah. Nathan went cold. What about it? The hospital system that failed, the electrical infrastructure, the safety protocols, all of it. Vanessa took a shaky breath. It was supplied by Meditech Solutions. 5 years ago, before you joined Sinclair, I consulted for them, helped design their hospital management software integration. Bam sai shamersimazen. The world tilted. Nathan heard her words but couldn't process them, his brain refusing to make the connection she was drawing. I didn't know about the safety failures, Vanessa continued quickly. I found out 2 years after my contract ended that they'd been covering up equipment malfunctions, falsifying inspection reports, prioritizing profit over patient safety. I went to regulators, tried to force audits, but Meditech had lawyers and money, and I was just a consultant with suspicions and incomplete evidence. Nathan stood up, suddenly needing distance. You worked for the company that killed my wife. I worked for them years before the fire. I tried to stop them when I learned what they were doing. But I wasn't fast enough, wasn't loud enough, and people died because I failed. People died because corporations decided profit mattered more than lives. Nathan's voice was hollow. You didn't cause that. But I benefited from it. My consulting fees from Meditech helped fund Sinclair's early development. I built my company on money earned from people who killed your wife. Vanessa looked wrecked. I should have told you earlier, before you joined Sinclair, before you trusted me. I couldn't find the words. Nathan tried to feel angry, betrayed, anything that made sense. Instead, he just felt tired of grief and loss, and the impossible mathematics of blame. Did you know? He asked. When you hired me, did you know about Sarah? Not then. Marcus mentioned it later. By the time I connected the timeline, Meditech, the hospital, the fire, you'd already been here 2 months, and I convinced myself it was coincidence, that telling you would hurt you unnecessarily. Her hands were shaking. I was a coward. I'm sorry. They stood in the stairwell that smelled like concrete and regret. Two people who'd somehow found each other in the wreckage of their respective damage, and were now facing whether that connection could survive the weight of the past. Nathan thought about Sarah, about systems failing, about the difference between causation and correlation and culpability. Thought about Vanessa spending years trying to expose corporate malfeasance and failing. Thought about both of them carrying guilt for things they couldn't control. I don't blame you, he said finally. For the fire, for not telling me sooner, for any of it. You should, maybe, but I don't. Nathan sat back down on the stairs, suddenly exhausted. I'm tired of blame. It doesn't bring anyone back. It doesn't fix anything. It just makes everything heavier. Vanessa sat beside him, carefully maintaining distance. What do we do now? I don't know. The board's going to rule on the investigation. HR is going to make recommendations. David's going to keep pushing until something breaks. Nathan looked at her. But I meant what I said in there. You're the best leader I've worked for. Whatever happens with us, personally, that's true. Us, personally? Vanessa repeated quietly. Is there an us, personally? Nathan thought about Caleb hugging her in their apartment, about late-night texts and elevator conversations, and the specific relief of being understood, about how she made him feel like surviving grief wasn't the ceiling but the foundation. I don't know, see, he admitted. But I'd like to find out, after all this settles, if you still want to. I want to. She reached out, hesitated, then took his hand. I'm terrified, but I want to. They sat there holding hands in a stairwell while their careers burned down around them, and somehow Nathan felt more certain about this decision than anything he'd done since Sarah died. Whatever came next, board rulings, investigations, consequences he couldn't predict, at least he wouldn't face it alone. At least he'd finally been brave enough to fight for something instead of just surviving, even if it cost him everything. The board's decision came 3 days later. Nathan sat in his office pretending to work, while Rachel fielded calls and Marcus texted updates that ranged from hopeful to catastrophic depending on which board member was currently speaking. The investigation had expanded beyond Nathan and Vanessa to include David's complaints, Meditech's historical corruption, and the question of whether Sinclair Technologies' leadership culture was fundamentally broken or just caught in a power struggle. Caleb had asked that morning why Dad seemed so worried. Nathan had tried to explain corporate politics in terms an 8-year-old could understand and failed spectacularly, settling on some people at work are fighting about who gets to make decisions, which was accurate if incomplete. That's stupid, Caleb had said, echoing his earlier assessment. They should just let the smartest people make decisions. That would be nice, buddy. The world doesn't always work that way. Then the world is broken and someone should fix it. Nathan had smiled despite everything, because his son's absolute certainty that broken things could be fixed was exactly the kind of stubborn optimism Sarah would have loved. His phone rang at 2:15. Helen Chen. Mr. Brooks, can you come to the executive conference room? The board has reached a decision. Nathan's stomach dropped. Yes, ma'am. I'll be right there. He walked to the elevator on legs that felt borrowed, past colleagues who either didn't look at him or looked too closely. Rachel appeared at his side without him noticing. I'm coming with you, she said. You don't have to. I'm your second in command. If you're going down, I'm witnessing it. She hit the elevator button. Besides, someone needs to take over the project when they fire you, and I'd rather hear the details firsthand. Always thinking strategically. Someone has to. But her voice was gentle. For what it's worth, I think you did the right thing. Stupid, career-ending, but right. The conference room held fewer people this time. Helen Chen, 3 other board members, Vanessa sitting with perfect posture and a face that revealed nothing, and David Goldman looking like Christmas had come early. Nathan sat. Vanessa met his eyes for half a second, something complicated passing between them. Then they both looked away. Helen Chen cleared her throat. We've completed our review of the HR investigation, Mr. Brooks's testimony, and related matters concerning leadership practices at Sinclair Technologies. Before we discuss our findings, I want to be clear that this board takes workplace ethics seriously. We will not tolerate favoritism, inappropriate relationships, or leadership decisions based on personal rather than professional considerations. Nathan felt his career ending in real time. However, Helen continued, we also will not tolerate the weaponization of HR processes to settle personal vendettas or undermine legitimate business decisions. She looked directly at David. The evidence Mr. Brooks presented demonstrates that Ms. Sinclair's promotion decisions were based on merit and results. The diagnostic system has exceeded all performance metrics. Hospital partnerships are expanding. Patient outcomes have measurably improved. These are facts, not opinions. David's expression shifted from confident to uncertain. Furthermore, Helen said, our investigation revealed that Mr. Goldman has a pattern of questioning Ms. Sinclair's authority in ways that suggest gender bias rather than legitimate business concerns. 4 separate executives testified that Mr. Goldman has made comments suggesting women lack the necessary ruthlessness for leadership positions. That's taken out of context, David started. David Opetstes. The context was a meeting where you argued Miss Sinclair was too emotional to handle board pressure. Helen's voice went cold. The pattern is clear. You've spent 2 years trying to undermine a CEO whose performance metrics exceed every predecessor. That ends now. She turned to Vanessa. Ms. Sinclair, the board has voted to affirm your position as CEO with full confidence. We apologize for the investigation's intrusion and thank you for your patience during this process. Vanessa's careful composure cracked slightly. Thank you. As for you, Mr. Brooks, Helen said, and Nathan braced for impact. You violated protocol by interrupting a closed board meeting. That behavior cannot be condoned regardless of your intentions. I understand. However, your evidence was compelling, and your defense of Ms. Sinclair's leadership demonstrated exactly the kind of principled commitment we value in executives. Helen almost smiled. Consider this a formal reprimand and a warning not to make a habit of dramatic gestures. Your position remains secure. Nathan couldn't quite process what he was hearing. I'm not fired? You're not fired. Though I suggest being more judicious about board meeting interruptions in the future. Helen turned to David. Mr. Goldman, effective immediately, you're being reassigned to our European operations. Your talents will be better utilized there, and the distance will provide perspective on workplace dynamics. David stood so fast his chair fell over. This is ridiculous. I raised legitimate concerns. You raised a vendetta disguised as concern. The board sees the difference. Helen's expression was steel. You have 2 choices. Accept the reassignment or tender your resignation. Either way, your involvement in Sinclair's domestic operations ends today. David looked around the room, saw no allies, and walked out with the particular fury of someone who'd gambled everything and lost. The remaining board members filed out until only Helen, Vanessa, and Nathan remained. That was closer than I'd like, Helen said. David had 3 board members ready to vote for Ms. Sinclair's removal until your testimony shifted the dynamics. Though I do hope you understand how reckless that was. I do, Nathan said. I'm sorry for the disruption. Don't be sorry, be smarter. Helen gathered her materials. Ms. Sinclair, a word of advice, and I mean this with respect. Be careful about the appearance of favoritism. You were right to promote Mr. Brooks. His work justifies the decision. But perception matters in leadership, and you need to be above reproach. I understand. After Helen left, Nathan and Vanessa sat in silence that felt weighted with everything they hadn't said, everything they'd almost lost. We survived, Vanessa said finally. Barely. Still counts. She looked at him. What you did, interrupting that meeting, that was incredibly stupid. I've been told. And incredibly brave. Her voice softened. Thank you for fighting when I told you not to. Sarah used to say I was stubborn to the point of self-destruction. Apparently she was right. Vanessa smiled, small and genuine. Stubbornness has its place, especially when the alternative is accepting injustice. They stood. Nathan knew they should probably discuss next steps, professional boundaries, how to navigate whatever this was between them. Instead, they just looked at each other like 2 people who'd survived something together and weren't sure what came next. I should get back to work, Nathan said. Rachel's probably having a heart attack waiting for news. Tell her congratulations on not needing to take over your project. Vanessa hesitated. Nathan, about what I told you in the stairwell, about Meditech and the fire. If you need time to process that, to decide how you feel about working here, I've decided I'm staying. The work matters more than corporate history or coincidence or guilt neither of us earned. He met her eyes. But eventually we need to talk about the other thing, the personal thing. I know, just not today. Today I need to survive being CEO for another few hours and figure out how to rebuild executive team dynamics after David's departure. Fair enough. Nathan walked out feeling like he'd survived a battle that should have killed him. Rachel was waiting by the elevators, trying to look casual and failing completely. Well? She demanded. Not fired. David's being exiled to Europe. Vanessa keeps her job. We all pretend the last 3 weeks didn't happen. Rachel exhaled hard. Thank God. I did not want to explain to my next employer why my previous team imploded spectacularly. Your confidence in me is touching. My confidence in corporate politics is appropriately calibrated. She hit the elevator button. Come on, team's been stress-eating Thai food and needs to hear you're not unemployed. The diagnostic system team had indeed ordered enough Thai food to feed a small army and were stress-eating in the conference room when Nathan arrived. They cheered when he walked in, and for the first time in weeks, Nathan felt like maybe things were actually going to be okay. They spent the rest of the afternoon doing actual work, reviewing deployment schedules, debugging integration issues, celebrating small victories. It felt normal in a way Nathan had almost forgotten was possible, like maybe the crisis was actually over instead of just temporarily paused. He left the office at 6, picked up Caleb from Mrs. Pacheco's, and made pancakes for dinner because neither of them could face anything more complicated. How was your day? Caleb asked around a mouthful of chocolate chips. Complicated, but good. The work stuff got resolved. Does that mean Vanessa can come back and help with my robot? Nathan had been dreading this question. Maybe, eventually. We need to be careful about work and personal life staying separate right now. Caleb frowned. That's stupid. She's good at explaining sensors and she laughs at my jokes. Why does work matter if she's a good person? Because grown-up politics is complicated and sometimes good people have to be careful about appearances. I don't understand why everyone cares so much about what things look like instead of what they actually are. That, Nathan said, is an excellent question with a terrible answer, which is that people are often more comfortable with their assumptions than reality. Caleb considered this with the seriousness he brought to debugging code. Mom would have said that's because people are lazy thinkers who don't want to do the hard work of actually paying attention. Nathan's chest tightened. She would have said exactly that. Your mom was very smart about people. I know. That's why she married you. Because you actually pay attention even when it's hard. Caleb pushed pancake pieces around his plate. I miss her, but it doesn't hurt as much as it used to. Is that okay? Yeah, buddy, that's more than okay. That's healing. Does it mean I'm forgetting her? No. It means you're learning to carry her with you instead of just hurting. There's a difference. Nathan reached across the table, squeezed Caleb's hand. She'd be proud of you. The robots, the coding, how smart you are, all of it. She'd be proud of you too, for not giving up when things were hard. They finished dinner and spent the evening implementing Vanessa's capacitive sensor suggestions. The new array worked beautifully, responding to touch with precision the old resistive sensors couldn't achieve. Caleb narrated his entire testing process while Nathan held components and made appropriate impressed noises. Around 9, after Caleb was asleep, Nathan sat on his couch with a beer he wasn't drinking and tried to process everything that had happened. He'd survived a board investigation, kept his job, defended someone he cared about, and somehow not destroyed both their careers in the process. Sarah would have been proud of the standing up for what mattered part. Terrified by the recklessness, but proud. His phone buzzed. A text from Vanessa. Are you awake? Yeah, I can't sleep. Adrenaline crash. Same. I keep expecting someone to call and tell me the board changed their mind. Helen seemed pretty definitive about David being the problem, not you. I know, but I've spent so long waiting for the other shoe to drop that success feels suspicious. Nathan smiled at his phone. That's incredibly cynical and probably healthy given your industry. My industry is full of people who smile while calculating how to destroy you. Cynicism is survival. Sounds exhausting. It is, but less exhausting than being destroyed. A pause. Thank you again for today. I know I said it already, but I can't stop thinking about you walking into that board meeting like you had nothing to lose. I had everything to lose. I just decided you mattered more than safety. The typing indicator appeared and disappeared several times. Finally, that terrifies me. Why? Because people who matter can hurt you. I've built a very successful life avoiding that. How's that working out? I have a billion-dollar company, and no one I trust enough to be honest with, except an architect who barely tolerates corporate politics, and an 8-year-old who explains robot sensors like he's teaching advanced physics. Nathan laughed. Caleb would be thrilled to hear you describe him that way. He should be. He's extraordinary. You're raising someone special. I'm raising someone I don't understand half the time and hoping I don't screw up too badly. That's just parenting. You're doing fine. Nathan stared at his phone at this conversation that felt too easy given everything they should probably be discussing instead. Helen's warning about perception echoed in his head. Marcus's advice about being careful. Rachel's observation that they looked like something even when they claimed to be nothing. We should probably talk, he typed, about the personal thing. About what this is. I know, but I'm not ready tonight. Tonight I just want to pretend the world isn't watching every decision I make. Fair enough, but eventually we need to figure out if we're colleagues or friends or something else entirely. What if I don't know which one I want? Then we figure it out together, trial and error, like debugging code. That's a terrible metaphor for human relationships. I'm an engineer. All my metaphors are terrible. There was a longer pause. Then, I like you, Nathan Brooks. More than is probably wise or professional or safe. That's as honest as I can be right now. Nathan's heart did something complicated. I like you too. More than I thought I could after Sarah. That terrifies me, but it also feels like maybe I'm not just surviving anymore. What does that mean? Not just surviving. It means I'm building something new instead of just existing in the wreckage of what I lost. It means Caleb laughs again. It means work feels like it matters. It means you walked into my apartment with mango sticky rice and treated my son like he was important, and I haven't been able to stop thinking about it. I treated him like he was important because he is important, and because you're important, and because I'm tired of pretending I don't care about people just because caring is complicated. So where does that leave us? I don't know. But I'd like to find out. Carefully, slowly, with appropriate professional boundaries that Helen won't interpret as favoritism. That sounds incredibly unsexy. I'm a CEO navigating corporate politics while trying not to get fired for having feelings. Sexy is not my priority right now. Nathan smiled. Your priorities are noted. I can do careful and slow. Can you? You interrupted a board meeting to defend me. That's not exactly careful. That was professional defending. Personal is different. How? Personal means I actually let myself feel things instead of just acting on principle. Personal means I stop pretending you're just my CEO and admit that somewhere in the last 6 months you became someone I trust, someone I care about, someone who makes me want to be brave instead of just careful. The typing indicator appeared and disappeared for a long time. Nathan wondered if he'd said too much, crossed some line they hadn't acknowledged existed. Finally, I'm going to need time to process that. And we should probably have this conversation in person instead of via text at midnight when we're both exhausted and emotionally compromised. Agreed. When? This weekend? Saturday afternoon? Somewhere that isn't work or either of our apartments? There's a coffee shop near the park Caleb likes. Quiet, good coffee, neutral territory. Send me the address. I'll be there at 2. It's a date. Or a meeting, or whatever we're calling it. Let's call it a conversation and see where it goes. Nathan put his phone down and sat in the dark, feeling something that might have been hope or terror, or both tangled together. He'd just made plans with his CEO to discuss feelings, which violated every professional boundary he'd spent 6 months carefully maintaining. But he was also tired of careful. Tired of letting fear make all his decisions. Tired of surviving when living was right there waiting if he was brave enough to reach for it. Saturday afternoon came with unexpected nerves. Nathan dropped Caleb at Marcus's place for an afternoon of video games and terrible snacks, fielded his son's pointed questions about where he was going and who he was meeting with vague answers that fooled exactly no one. "You're going to see Vanessa," Caleb announced with 8-year-old certainty. "Mrs. Pacheco says adults get nervous like this when they like someone. Mrs. Pacheco should mind her own business. She says that's what neighbors are for, observing and commenting." Caleb grinned. "I like Vanessa. She's smart and she doesn't talk to me like I'm little." "I like her too, buddy. That's why I'm nervous." "Why? If you both like each other, that's good." "Adult feelings are more complicated than that." "That's stupid. Feelings are feelings. You either have them or you don't." Caleb grabbed his backpack. "Tell Vanessa I figured out the sensor calibration issue, and I'll show her next time." "You're very confident there's going to be a next time." "Of course there is. You're not dumb enough to mess this up." Caleb said it with the absolute certainty of children who hadn't yet learned that smart people made stupid decisions constantly. Nathan hoped he was right. The coffee shop was exactly as neutral as he remembered. Local place with mismatched furniture and terrible acoustic music, busy enough for privacy but quiet enough for conversation. Vanessa was already there, sitting at a corner table, wearing jeans and a sweater that made her look younger, more uncertain, less like a CEO, and more like someone trying to figure out feelings she hadn't allowed herself in years. "Hi," Nathan said, sliding into the chair across from her. "Hi." Vanessa had coffee already, was fidgeting with the cup in a way that suggested she was as nervous as he was. "This is weird, right? Meeting like this?" "Extremely weird, but also necessary." Nathan ordered coffee from a passing barista, buying time to organize thoughts that refused to organize. "So, we should probably talk about what we're doing. Are we doing something?" "I think so. I'm just not sure what." Vanessa smiled slightly. "At least we're equally confused." "Great foundation for whatever this is." Nathan accepted his coffee, grateful for something to do with his hands. "Okay. Cards on the table. I like you. I'm attracted to you. I respect you professionally and personally. I also have an 8-year-old son who's already attached to you and a dead wife whose memory I'm still figuring out how to carry. That's the complicated mess that is my life." "My turn?" Vanessa took a breath. "I like you. I'm attracted to you. You're the first person in years who's seen past the CEO to the actual person underneath. You're also my employee, which creates power dynamic issues that could destroy both our careers. I'm terrified of caring about people because everyone I've cared about has either left or betrayed me. That's my complicated mess." They sat there with their respective messes laid out between them like pieces of a puzzle that didn't quite fit. "This is a terrible idea," Nathan said. "Absolutely terrible. We should probably maintain professional distance and pretend this conversation never happened. That would be the smart choice. Are you going to make the smart choice? Nathan asked. Vanessa looked at him with those gray eyes that had seen too much and somehow stayed kind anyway. No. Are you? No. So we're doing this, whatever this is. Apparently, Nathan felt something loosen in his chest, with boundaries, and slow, and very carefully, so Helen Chen doesn't have another heart attack about workplace ethics. All of that. But also, honestly, no hiding, no pretending things are simpler than they are. Vanessa reached across the table, took his hand. I need you to know that the Meditech thing, Sarah's death, all of it, if you need time to work through how you feel about that connection, I understand. Nathan looked at their joined hands, at this woman who carried guilt for things she couldn't control, who'd tried to expose corruption and failed, who'd somehow ended up tangled in his grief, through coincidence and bad timing. I've spent 2 years angry at systems that failed, he said quietly. At hospitals that cut corners, corporations that prioritized profit, people who made decisions that killed my wife. That anger didn't bring her back. It didn't make anything better. It just made me heavy. He met Vanessa's eyes. You tried to stop them. You failed, but you tried. That matters more than the coincidence of your involvement. You're very forgiving. I'm very tired of blame. There's a difference. Nathan squeezed her hand. Besides, if we're going to do this, whatever this is, it can't start with me resenting you for things you couldn't control. That's not fair to either of us. Vanessa's eyes were bright. How are you this emotionally healthy after everything you've been through? I'm a mess held together by stubbornness and the desperate need to not screw up my kid. Nathan smiled. But I'm trying. That counts for something. It counts for everything. They talked for 2 hours, the kind of conversation that happened when people stopped performing and just existed together. Vanessa told him about building her first company at 23 and watching investors tear it apart when she wouldn't compromise on safety standards. About spending her 20s proving she was smarter than every man who underestimated her, and her 30s realizing that winning didn't feel like she'd thought it would. Nathan told her about Sarah, about the good years and the ordinary problems, and how grief had taught him that love didn't end just because someone died. It just learned new shapes. About Caleb's brilliance and his fear and the specific terror of raising someone extraordinary while feeling inadequate. You're not inadequate, Vanessa said. You're honest. That's rarer than you think. You're honest too. You just hide it behind corporate polish. The polish is armor. You're the first person I've let past it in years. Why me? Vanessa considered the question seriously. Because you didn't want anything from me except honesty. Because you looked at me on that terrace and saw a person instead of a position. Because you're raising someone remarkable and doing work that matters and somehow surviving loss that would destroy most people. She smiled. And because you're stubborn enough to interrupt board meetings when you think it's right, which is either inspiring or terrifying depending on perspective. Probably both. Definitely both. They left the coffee shop as afternoon turned to evening, walking through the park where parents chased toddlers and teenagers pretended to be too cool for playground equipment. It felt normal in this best possible way. 2 people figuring out if they fit together, no crisis-forcing decisions, just the ordinary risk of caring about someone and hoping it didn't end in disaster. What do we tell people? Nathan asked. At work, about this. Nothing yet. We're colleagues exploring a friendship. That's not against policy. Vanessa's hand brushed his as they walked. When it becomes more than friendship, if it becomes more, we disclose to HR like adults and deal with whatever protocols exist for executive relationships. That sounds very responsible. I'm a CEO. Responsible is my brand. But she smiled. Though for the record, I'm hoping it becomes more than friendship. Me too. Nathan walked Vanessa to her car, stood in the parking lot trying to figure out how to say goodbye to someone who was maybe becoming something important. She solved the problem by kissing him, quick and soft and terrifying in its simplicity. That was against the going slow rule, Nathan said when she pulled back. Consider it a preview of things to come when we're not worried about board investigations. Vanessa's smile was genuine, unguarded, the version of her that existed underneath all the armor. Thank you for today. For being honest, for not running when I gave you every reason to. Thank you for being worth staying for. He watched her drive away, then stood in the parking lot feeling like he'd just stepped off a cliff and discovered he could fly. His phone rang. Marcus. Caleb just beat me at Mario Kart for the 5th time and is demanding pizza as tribute, Marcus said. Also, how did the not a date go? It went well, really well. Define well. Does well mean you're friends? Or well mean I'm going to be best man at a wedding that gives HR a collective heart attack? It means we're figuring things out, slowly, with appropriate boundaries. Nathan Brooks doing something slowly and carefully. I'll believe it when I see it. But Marcus sounded genuinely happy. I'm glad. You deserve something good after the last few years. So does she. Yeah, she does. Marcus paused. Just be careful. I know I keep saying that and you keep ignoring me, but I know. Corporate politics, perception, all of it. We're being smart about it. Famous last words, but okay. Nathan picked up Caleb, endured his son's pointed questions about where he'd been and whether Vanessa was his girlfriend, now with vague answers that fooled no one. They ordered pizza and spent the evening implementing sensor improvements while Caleb narrated his Mario Kart victories with the enthusiasm of someone who'd discovered he was naturally talented at something. Did you have fun with Vanessa? Caleb asked around a mouthful of pepperoni. I did. We talked about work and life and complicated grown-up feelings. Are you going to see her again? Not at work, I mean. I hope so, if that's okay with you. Caleb considered this seriously. Is she going to be like a new mom? Nathan's chest tightened. No one's going to replace Mom. That's not how it works. I know, but Mrs. Pacheco says sometimes people find new love after old love, and that's okay because hearts are big enough for lots of people. Mrs. Pacheco is very wise. So is it okay if you like Vanessa like that? Nathan pulled Caleb close, breathing in the smell of pizza and childhood. Yeah, buddy, it's okay. Mom would want us to be happy. That doesn't mean forgetting her. It means living the kind of life she'd be proud of. Then I think you should keep seeing Vanessa. She makes you smile like you used to before Mom died. I like that. They fell into a new rhythm after that. Nathan and Vanessa were careful at work, professional, appropriate, no special treatment that could be misconstrued as favoritism. But twice a week they met for coffee, for walks in the park, for conversations that felt like learning someone from the inside out. Vanessa came to dinner at Nathan's apartment and helped Caleb debug code while Nathan cooked. Nathan met her at the office on Saturday when the building was empty, and they worked side by side on separate projects. The comfortable silence of people who didn't need constant conversation to feel connected. 3 months passed. The diagnostic system deployed to 40 hospitals nationwide. Lives were saved, not dramatically, not with fanfare, just the quiet accumulation of early diagnoses and prevented tragedies that statistics captured but headlines ignored. David Goldman's complaints from Europe grew increasingly bitter and increasingly irrelevant. The board renewed Vanessa's contract with unanimous approval. Nathan's team expanded, the project's success justifying more resources, more ambitious goals. And somewhere in the careful, slow building of trust, Nathan realized he'd fallen in love. It happened quietly, without drama. Watching Vanessa explain circuit theory to Caleb with the patience of someone who genuinely cared, seeing her defend Rachel from a condescending executive, reading her emails that were technically about work, but felt like conversation, like connection, like someone seeing him and choosing to stay anyway. He told her on a Saturday evening in early autumn, sitting on his couch after Caleb was asleep, the words coming out uncertain and necessary. I think I'm in love with you. Vanessa went very still. That's terrifying. I know. I'm sorry. Don't apologize. She turned to face him. I think I'm in love with you too. I just didn't know how to say it without sounding like I've lost all professional judgment. Have you? Completely. It's extremely concerning. But she smiled. Nathan Brooks, you've ruined my carefully maintained emotional distance and made me care about people again. That's either the best thing that's happened to me or the thing that's going to destroy everything I've built. I haven't decided which. Can it be both? Probably. Vanessa kissed him, soft and certain. I'm terrified, but I'm in. Me too. They told HR the following Monday. A formal disclosure of their relationship, acknowledgement of potential conflicts, agreement to maintain professional boundaries and recuse themselves from decisions directly affecting the other. The HR representative looked unsurprised and vaguely exhausted, like she'd been expecting this conversation for months. They told Caleb next, who responded with 8-year-old pragmatism. I know. You both look at each other all weird and happy. It's obvious. They told Marcus, who laughed for 5 minutes straight, then demanded details about how they'd managed to date for 3 months without him noticing. They told the team, who'd apparently had a betting pool about when they'd admit what everyone already knew. The gossip that followed was inevitable. Whispers about the CEO dating a subordinate, questions about favoritism, speculation about how long it would last. Nathan had expected it to bother him more than it did. Instead, he just felt tired of other people's opinions about his life. Let them talk, Vanessa said when he mentioned the office gossip. We're following policy. We're doing good work. If people want to waste time speculating about our relationship instead of focusing on their own jobs, that's their problem. Very CEO of you. I've spent 10 years caring what people think. It's exhausting and it doesn't change anything. She took his hand. I'm choosing to care about what's real instead. You're real. Caleb's real. This work is real. Everything else is just noise. 6 months later, Sinclair Technologies announced a major expansion of the diagnostic system. Partnerships with 300 hospitals, integration with emergency medical services, funding for rural healthcare access. The press coverage was extensive, praising Vanessa's leadership and the company's commitment to ethical innovation. Nathan's name appeared in the articles as lead architect, his work finally getting recognition that had nothing to do with who he was dating and everything to do with systems that actually saved lives. The company threw a celebration event, nothing as expensive as the original retreat, but enough to acknowledge the team's success. They held it at the same beach resort where Nathan and Vanessa had first met, which felt like either poetry or corporate irony depending on your perspective. Nathan stood on the same terrace where he'd once told Vanessa she was the first beautiful thing he'd noticed since Sarah died. It felt like a lifetime ago and also like yesterday, time doing that strange compression where pain felt distant but the memory stayed sharp. Vanessa found him there as the sun set, slipping her hand into his with the easy comfort of people who'd learned each other's edges and decided they fit anyway. You're thinking too hard, she observed. I'm thinking about the last time we stood here, about everything that's happened since. Regrets? None. Nathan pulled her closer. It's been chaos and politics and the messiest possible way to fall in love with someone. But I wouldn't change it. Not even the board investigation, the HR drama, David Goldman's vendetta. Not even that. It taught me that some things are worth fighting for even when the fight is stupid and exhausting. He kissed her temple. You're worth fighting for. So are you. Vanessa was quiet for a moment. I've been thinking about something. About next steps. Personal next steps or professional next steps? Both. She turned to face him. I'm going to step down as CEO. Nathan's heart stopped. What? Why? Because I've spent 10 years building this company and I'm proud of what we've created. But I'm tired, Nathan. Tired of board meetings and politics and fighting battles that shouldn't exist. I want to build things again. Actually write code, design systems, work on problems that have elegant solutions. She smiled. And I want time for a life that isn't just work. For you, for Caleb, for figuring out what comes next without corporate pressure dictating every decision. You're serious. Completely. I'm recommending Rachel as my successor. She's brilliant, politically savvy, and actually wants the job. I'll stay on the board, maintain strategic oversight, but day-to-day operations will be someone else's problem. Nathan tried to process this. The woman who'd built an empire deciding to walk away from it. What will you do instead? I thought I might teach. MIT's been asking me to guest lecture for years. Or I could consult, help other startups avoid the mistakes I made. Or, she hesitated. I could build something new, something smaller, with you maybe, if you're interested. What kind of something? I don't know yet, but I know I want it to be meaningful work with people I trust, without the pressure of shareholders and quarterly earnings and David Goldman types questioning every decision. Vanessa's eyes were bright. I'm $40 million past wealthy enough to retire. Maybe it's time to figure out what I actually want instead of what I'm supposed to want. Nathan pulled her into a kiss that tasted like possibility and sunset and the specific relief of choosing life over just survival. When they finally pulled apart, Vanessa was smiling. Is that a yes to building something new together? That's a yes to whatever comes next as long as we're figuring it out together. Even if it's messy and complicated and completely uncertain? Especially then, they stood on the terrace as the party continued inside. Two people who'd survived loss and scandal and corporate warfare, who'd chosen each other despite every logical reason not to, who'd learned that moving forward didn't mean betraying the past. It meant building something new from the pieces that remained. The sunset burned orange and gold across water that finally looked right, looked beautiful, looked like the beginning of something instead of the end. 1 year later, Nathan and Caleb moved into a house on the coast. Not a penthouse, just a modest place with enough room for a workshop where Caleb could build increasingly ambitious robots, and a home office where Nathan could work without the political weight of Sinclair's corporate headquarters. Vanessa joined them 6 months after that, the three of them figuring out the messy logistics of blended families and shared space, and a 9-year-old who'd somehow gained both a father who smiled again and a brilliant woman who treated his robot projects as seriously as board presentations. They started a small consulting firm, just the two of them, taking on projects that mattered, turning down anything that felt like profit over ethics. It was smaller work, quieter work, but it felt right in ways corporate success never had. The anniversary of Sarah's death still came every year. Nathan still felt it, still carried that loss like weight he'd learned to distribute. But Caleb talked about his mother now, casual mentions of things she'd said, observations that she would have loved this or laughed at that. Grief had become memory, still present but no longer crushing. On a Saturday afternoon in late spring, Nathan and Vanessa sat on their deck watching Caleb test his latest autonomous robot in the yard. It navigated obstacles with precision, adjusted to terrain changes, completed complex tasks with the kind of elegance that suggested its designer understood systems at a fundamental level. "He's going to change the world someday," Vanessa said. "He already is, just in small ways, one robot at a time." "Like his father," Nathan smiled. "I just taught computers to be less stupid." "Stop doing that. Stop diminishing what you've built." Vanessa took his hand. "You created a diagnostic system that saved hundreds of lives. You're raising an extraordinary kid who's brilliant and kind and sees the world as problems waiting for solutions. You survived loss that would break most people and somehow came out the other side still believing work could matter." She squeezed his hand. "That's not just teaching computers. That's changing lives." "You changed mine," Nathan said quietly. "You and Caleb both taught me the difference between surviving and living. We taught each other." They sat in comfortable silence, watching Caleb's robot successfully navigate around the garden furniture, hearing their son's whoop of triumph when it completed its program sequence perfectly. "Hey Dad, Vanessa," Caleb called. "It worked! The pathfinding algorithm actually worked!" "Told you it would," Vanessa called back. "You also told me the sensor calibration would work, and that took 3 tries. Trial and error is part of engineering. You know this." Caleb grinned and went back to his robot, already planning improvements, modifications, the next iteration that would be even better. Nathan looked at Vanessa, at the house they'd built together, at the life that had somehow emerged from the wreckage of loss and corporate warfare, and two people who'd been too damaged to trust anyone and had somehow learned to trust each other. "I have something for you," Vanessa said suddenly. She disappeared inside and returned carrying a small box that made Nathan's heart do complicated things because he recognized the size, the shape, the specific weight of possibility. "Vanessa, wait. Before you panic, let me say this." She sat down beside him, holding the box but not opening it. "I spent 10 years believing that staying alone was safer, that building walls meant protecting myself, that caring about people gave them power to destroy me. Then you stood on a terrace and told me I was beautiful in the saddest possible way, and everything I thought I knew about safety turned out to be just fear disguised as wisdom. I was a mess that night. You were honest, and that honesty made me realize I'd been surviving instead of living." Vanessa opened the box. Inside was a ring, simple, elegant, the kind of design that suggested thought rather than expense. "I'm not asking you to forget Sarah. I'm not asking Caleb to replace his mother. I'm just asking if maybe we could build something permanent together. Something that acknowledges we're all still carrying our own damage, but choosing to carry it together. Nathan stared at the ring, at this woman who'd fought board members and corporate sharks, and her own fear of vulnerability to get to this moment. "You're proposing to me," he said, slightly stunned. "I'm a CEO. We're used to taking initiative." Vanessa smiled. "Though if you'd rather do the traditional thing where you ask me, I'll wait. Impatiently, but I'll wait." Nathan laughed, feeling something that might have been joy or relief, or the specific lightness of realizing that life could still surprise you in good ways. "Caleb," he called, "come here for a second." His son appeared, covered in dirt and robot grease, looking between them with the calculation of a child who'd learned to read situations quickly. "What's up?" "Vanessa just asked me to marry her," Nathan said. "I wanted to check if you were okay with that before I answered." Caleb looked at the ring, at Vanessa, at his father. Then he grinned with the uncomplicated happiness of someone who'd survived loss and learned that new love didn't erase old love, just made the heart bigger. "Obviously, you should say yes. She's smart, she likes robots, and she makes you happy. Those are the important things." He looked at Vanessa. "Can I call you V? Mom used to be Mom, so it feels weird to have two moms, but Vanessa is too formal for family." Vanessa's eyes were bright. "V works perfectly." "Cool." Caleb turned back to Nathan. "So are you going to say yes or just stand there looking weird and emotional?" Nathan pulled Vanessa close, kissed her while Caleb made exaggerated gagging noises in the background, and felt the weight he'd been carrying for 3 years finally shift into something bearable. "Yes," he said against her lips. "Absolutely yes." Vanessa slipped the ring on his finger because she was a CEO and did things her own way, and kissed him again while Caleb cheered and the robot beeped completion of another successful navigation sequence, and the ocean stretched beyond their yard into distance that finally felt like possibility instead of loss. They married 6 months later on the same beach where they'd first met. Small ceremony with just family and close friends. Marcus served as best man. Rachel gave a speech about how she'd known this was coming from the moment Nathan interrupted that board meeting. Caleb served as ring bearer and took his duties extremely seriously. The reception was simple. Good food, better company, none of the corporate pressure that had defined so much of their early relationship. They danced on the beach as the sun set, Vanessa in a dress that was elegant without being excessive, Nathan in a suit that Caleb had helped pick out. "No regrets?" Vanessa asked as they swayed to music playing from someone's phone. "None. You?" "Just that we wasted time being careful when we could have been doing this sooner." "Careful kept us employed. I'm okay with the timeline." Vanessa laughed. "Ever the pragmatist." "One of us has to be. You're the impulsive one who proposes without warning. I gave you plenty of warning. A year of dating, 6 months living together, countless conversations about future plans, and then a surprise proposal on a Saturday afternoon. The timing was romantic. The timing was you getting impatient. Also romantic." Vanessa kissed him. "I love you. Even when you're being pedantic about my proposal timing. I love you too, even when you're being impulsive and terrifying." They danced as the sunset painted everything gold, surrounded by people who'd watched them survive investigation and scandal and grief, who'd bet on them failing and been proven wrong, who understood that some love stories didn't follow rules because the best ones never did. Caleb appeared at Nathan's elbow. "Can I dance with V?" "Of course." Nathan stepped back, watching his son and his new wife figure out the logistics of dancing when one person was 9 and the other was in heels. Marcus joined him, beer in hand. "You did it. Actually pulled off the impossible." "What's impossible? Falling in love? Falling in love with your CEO, surviving corporate warfare, keeping your job, and somehow ending up married on a beach looking actually happy." Marcus clinked his beer against Nathan's glass. 2 years ago, you were drowning in grief. Look at you now." Nathan watched Caleb and Vanessa dancing, saw his son laughing, saw the woman who'd chosen them both looking at Caleb like he was precious and important and worth the complicated logistics of blended families. "I'm still carrying Sarah with me," Nathan said quietly. That doesn't just go away. I know, but you're carrying her differently now, like memory instead of open wound. Yeah, that's exactly it. Nathan smiled. She would have liked Vanessa. They would have argued about engineering philosophy and debugged code together and driven me crazy with their combined brilliance. Sarah would have been happy you found someone. She wasn't the type to want you suffering forever. De Salmasen. No, she would have told me to stop being dramatic and build something worth building. Nathan took a breath. So that's what I'm doing. The evening continued. Toasts and laughter and terrible dancing and all the ordinary joy of people celebrating love that had survived being tested. As the party wound down and guests started leaving, Nathan found Vanessa standing at the water's edge, shoes abandoned in the sand, looking at the ocean like it held answers. Thinking deep thoughts? He asked, joining her, thinking about how different this is from what I imagined my life would be. She leaned into him. I thought I'd build companies until I died. Alone and successful and protected by walls I'd spent decades perfecting. Instead, I'm married to an architect with terrible corporate political instincts and a stepmother to a 9-year-old robot genius. It's terrifying. Good terrifying or bad terrifying? The best kind. The kind that means I'm actually living instead of just surviving. Nathan wrapped his arms around her, the two of them standing in the surf as the last light faded. As their wedding guests dispersed, as Caleb played in the sand nearby with his latest robot creation. Thank you, Chess, he said. For what? For being brave enough to let me in. For choosing us even when it was complicated. For teaching me that moving forward doesn't mean forgetting what came before. He kissed her hair. For loving Caleb like he matters. He does matter. You both do. Vanessa turned to face him. I spent so long thinking success meant building an empire. Turns out it just means finding people worth building a life with. Boom, boom. They stood there as waves crashed and stars appeared, and Caleb called that his robot could now navigate by celestial positioning. Did they want to see? And Nathan realized that this was it. This was what living looked like after loss. Not forgetting, not replacing, but making room for new love alongside old grief. Building something imperfect and complicated and real with people who saw you at your worst and chose to stay anyway. Sarah would have approved, not because Vanessa was like her, she wasn't, but because Sarah had always believed that broken things could be fixed, that loss didn't have to be permanent, that stubbornness and hope and refusing to give up could actually change the world. Nathan had learned that lesson slowly, painfully, through years of grief and small victories and the gradual understanding that surviving wasn't enough. You had to choose to live, had to risk caring about people who could hurt you, had to build new things, even when you'd already lost everything once. It was terrifying. It was messy. It was the furthest thing from perfect. But standing on that beach with his wife and his son, and the ocean stretching into darkness, Nathan finally understood what Sarah had tried to teach him all along. That love was worth the risk. That building was better than breaking. That sometimes the bravest thing you could do was let yourself be happy again. The waves kept crashing. The stars kept appearing. Caleb's robot kept beeping successful navigation sequences. And Nathan Brooks, who'd spent 2 years drowning in grief, finally felt like he could breathe.